I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Welcome back, guys. I know it's been quite a bit since I have been live on a Sunday. I've been pretty busy these past couple of weekends, but I am back, fam. What's up? Let me know how you feel about the lighting. I've been working with a couple of things here. It was brought to my attention by my sister that my overhead lighting along with the ring lights was making me look a little flushed out. So I'll show you guys, for example, if I turn this back on, see how it looks kind of flat. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So I also got some LED strips, which my sister has helped me out with all this stuff because she's like a big gamer. So or not like a big gamer, but she's really into gaming. So my sister was here yesterday and my sister was helping me out and get me ideas for LED lights. So I have the LED lights. I haven't set those up yet, but I'm thinking about going with like a pink hue in the background. So, but yeah, I'm seeing the difference. I didn't notice it before until my sister pointed it out and I was like, oh my God, you're right. Oh, thank you. Kaime says definitely improvement in the lighting. Thank you. It does look different, right? It looks better. At least I think so. So yeah. And once I get those LED lights in the background too, with like I want to do like the pink. It's all different colors I can use, but I want to do like a pink because like that goes along with like the color of like the show. Like my logo is pink, black, and white. So I think that'll look really good too. But yeah, it's nice that now you can actually see my real skin tone and I don't look flushed out. All right, fam. What is that, Shaz? You're glowing. Listen, let me tell you something. I got this stuff called Sugar Glow or Glow Sugar Baby, something like that. I don't know. Again, this is another one of those things my sister was telling me about. And it's like you use it for your face. I think they have it for your body too. But like I have the Sugar Glow scrub that you can use like on your face. And like it really does make you glow. Like I'm not kidding. It really does make you glow. But yeah, we have quite a bit to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you so much for hanging out with me on a yeah. Everybody's noted. SF says, did you lose a few inches? You look amazing. Oh, thank you. I've been weightlifting for like a year now. And I went to the gym this morning. So weightlifting's really been helping me out. And also, Colin, my friend Colin from Indie News Network, Colin was just posting on Twitter that he's been, late weightlifting as well too. And I got to tell you guys, like weightlifting, like it completely changes you. It changes like your posture. Like I can sit up straight now. I notice I don't slouch anymore. It really does change a lot. But yeah, I've been lifting some weights, fam. Lifting some weights. So yeah, keeping it with the good vibes. Let's go ahead and shout out Sabby patrons, because like I said, we have quite a bit to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you will learn quite a bit from the show today. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. What is up, fam? Thank you guys so much. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters in the mix. And of course, we also have some Sabbies. Yeah, have some Sabbies. And of course, there are also members. Thank you to all of you. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker there as well. And I believe I shouted out those newbies last time. I have a couple more newbies that I'll shout out on Tuesday. But thank you guys so much for your support. What is up, fam? Go ahead and start us off right, ladies and gentlemen, and smash that like. Thank you if you can do that. And another thing, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the window behind me, like if the sun is still out, you see that little sun, that little glare right there. Typically that wouldn't be there because I usually go live later in the evening, but that's another thing I'm going to fix too, because that little light right there bothers me. Go away, go away. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into it, ladies and gentlemen. What are we discussing tonight? Oh boy, we have quite a number of stories for you. I'm so glad I'm going live today. Because we have to get into it. Tonight, we are discussing, Jaguar Wright spills the tea. That is a picture of Jaguar Wright there right next to Piers Morgan in that blue box. We're going to talk a little bit about some updates about this Diddy investigation. There are more allegations that have come forward, but also some of the things that Jaguar Wright had to say on Piers Morgan. Now, and I'll let you use your own judgment, because some of the things that Jaguar has said, people have pointed out that she doesn't have evidence of these statements that she's making. So you use your better judgment with that, but we're going to get into all of that. I was actually very surprised that she was on Piers Morgan's show. I was very surprised by that. So we'll get into that story. We're also going to discuss Jill Stein's rally in Dearborn, Michigan. That happened today. Jill Stein, along with the Abandon Harris movement, had a rally together that is huge, particularly those that are in Michigan. You know, it is one of the swing states. We all know that. I showed you before, Jill Stein is outperforming Kamala Harris with Muslim voters in that particular state. So this rally is a big deal. We're also going to discuss Anna Kasparian leaves the left, and she actually wrote an entire piece for this. So we're going to dive into, what's going on here? What's going on with Anna Kasparian, and what does that mean for TYT? And I'll tell you what I think about this. We're also going to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, Lindsey Graham dismisses North Carolina victims. Lindsey Graham is all out for himself and his donors, and he is getting called out, by the way, not just by people on the left. He's also getting called out by people on the right for the comments that he has made when discussing the North Carolina victims. And we're going to talk about some of the things that are happening in Asheville, North Carolina as well. You're going to get to hear from some of those people. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, Joy Reid lies about Muslim voters. Yes, Joy Reid on the hot mic, caught on a lie. And I don't think a lot of people realize the lie that she told. So that's why you have me. That's why you got me here. So I am going to get into all of that. We will also cover the main ballot measures for this year. We just finished up with Massachusetts. Now we're moving on to Maine. And there's a pretty cool one with Maine, and it has to deal with super PACs. Oh, super PACs. Oh. So let's go ahead and get started, fam. Let's go to the 2 comments here. Shout out to JB, my comrade from RBN, said, hello, everyone. I'm cooking dinner while listening. Fried chicken, cornbread stuffing, collard greens, and cornbread. And no, JB does not wash his collard greens in the bathtub. And I have to say that the rally was good. Forehead kisses to all, and be safe, Florida. Yeah. So there is another hurricane that is coming. This time, it looks like it's heading right for the Orlando, Florida area. So JB is going to have to prepare for that. And he was saying, like, it looks like it might hit around Wednesday. So there's another one that's coming. Shout out to Fuwa Chan. Happy Sunday, Sabby, or should I say happy Monday, since now is 1 a.m. in my end. LOL, I love your channel. Keep doing an amazing job. Thank you so much, and welcome. Welcome. We get people from all over the world. People from all over the world. All over the world. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with our first story here. And we got to give props to Case Study QB for this clip. I believe Case Study said he might retire at the end of this year. And we will miss the clips from Case Study because Case has been providing clips over the years to a number of independent media commentators. So shout out to Case Study for this, fam, because he caught it. And I wouldn't have seen it if he didn't get it. Joy Reid. Watch this, guys. She is going to tell a deliberate, well, I don't know if it's deliberate, but we'll get into it. Joy Reid is going to lie about a new poll that was just released by the Arab American Institute. I covered that poll on this show a couple of nights ago, and I told you then that I predicted that corporate media was going to either exaggerate this poll or that they were not going to be honest about it. And I was right. So Case Study QB comes in with the bam. The Arab/Muslim American vote is now tied at 42/41% between Trump and Harris. Let's go ahead and get into this. This doozy from Joy Reid.
Just for our audience to know that there is a new Zogby poll out that shows that the Arab and Muslim vote is now tied. That has not been the case for a long time. Arab and Muslim voters had become primarily Democrats, having used to have been a sort of Republican-leaning constituency. That's where they are right now. This is James Zogby was an excellent, John Zogby was an excellent pollster, one of the best. 42-41, trending tiny a bit toward Trump. And there was another thing in that poll that showed something pretty extraordinary that goes to what Juanita said, that had there been a Palestinian American speaker, a large plurality of those voters tell Mr. Zogby that they would have more than half of Arab Americans said they would have been more likely to support Vice President Harris had the DNC allowed a Palestinian American speaker. So I want to put a
pause. Let's go back to the beginning and see if you can catch the lie. Okay. Now, this is conducted by the Arab American Institute. The very beginning. Can you catch the lie?
Just for our audience to know that there is a new Zogby poll out that shows that the Arab and Muslim vote is now tied. That is not.
Okay. So I'll show you the poll, but the lie is right there in the beginning. The Arab Muslim vote. It's an Arab American poll. It is not a Muslim voter poll. Now I'm going to show you the Muslim voter poll. I told you they would lie about this. I told you they would, because number one, I don't know if that was just Joy Reid just assuming that they're one and the same, or if that was intentional, but they're definitely not one and the same. You can be Arab American and you can be Christian. You can be non-religious. You can be Jewish. There are Palestinian Jews. There are Palestinian Christians. Like, when you conflate the two, that's like saying, all Black Americans are Christian. That's just like assuming all Black Americans are Christian, and that's not the case, right? So did you catch that? Let's go back in.
Not been the case for a long time. Arab and Muslim voters had become primarily Democrats, having used to have been a sort of Republican-leaning constituency. That's where they are right now. This is James Zogby was an excellent, John Zogby was an excellent pollster, one of the best. 42-41, trending tiny a bit toward Trump. And there was another thing in that poll that showed something pretty extraordinary that goes to what Juanita said, that had there been a Palestinian American speaker, a large plurality of those voters tell Mr. Zogby that they would have, more than half of Arab Americans said they would have been more likely to support Vice President Harris had the DNC allowed a Palestinian American speaker. So I want to put a pin in that for a moment. But on the point that Juanita was just making, Jelani, this coalition cobbling means that they're trying to pull all of these pieces together. The Palestinian American and Arab American piece is not holding necessarily. And so you do have now Tim Walz speaking to the Muslim American Coalition today. That's the other thing that's happening at this time. He's out.
So now we're conflating two different groups. She was talking about an Arab American poll, which polled Arab Americans that can have different religious affiliations or could be non-religious at all. And now she's talking about Tim Walz is going out to speak to a Muslim coalition. So what people have to understand, and this is why it's important to break this down, is that for whatever reason, Americans tend to think, or a lot of Americans tend to assume, that all Muslim Americans are Arab American or are Arab. And that's not true. I remember when I was a kid, and you'll still see this, by the way. I remember when I was a kid, when I was at my grandmother's house, I remember in Baltimore, the Muslim guys from the Nation of Islam, Black Muslims, they used to give out bean pies and stuff like that on the corner. I remember that. And so for whatever reason, with the American population, a lot of people tend to assume that when they think Muslim, they think that you're automatically Arab. And that's not the case. There are Black Muslims. And I don't know why people forget this, because even Muhammad Ali, right? Even Malcolm X. And it's so weird to me how people would just assume, and this is something, again, I swear to God, Butch Rare was so right about this when he talked about the Democratic Party, that they just totally forget the fact that there are a lot of people that are Muslim that are Black Muslims. So that's something I think we need to work on in this country. Let's continue here.
Speaking to that constituency, trying to grab them and pull them in. But talk a little bit about the risk assessment part of this, because for Democrats, they have to keep this whole coalition together. And the threat that we're facing is Project 2025 and unleashed Donald Trump, unleashed police, unleashed death penalty. The things he's threatening to do are so catastrophic. His seizure of the federal government is so risky. That's why people are putting up with it.
I think one of the most interesting things right now would be to get a glance at what Keith Ellison's cell phone looks like, because he's the most prominent, potentially most prominent Muslim, among the most prominent Muslims in the Democratic Party. And so I'm sure he is getting a lot of questions about how people can position themselves, especially being right there in Minnesota. Now, the other part of this, I think, that's significant is that I think people did not anticipate, that vote breaking down, the way that it has in Michigan. I had a sense of this because I had been in dialogue with several Palestinian activists and journalists who had been reporting from there, and they were saying, look, this thing is going to be close between those two, and there's also going to be, a third element here, which is strong support for Jill Stein in that community as well, far above the national average. And so what people are essentially doing is looking at Donald Trump's, pledge to ban Muslims and his attempt to ban Muslims, and counterbalancing that with what they see as the execution of the war in Gaza with the blessings of the White House.
Let me interject here. So he's talking about the Muslim ban, which I am heavily against. I was against it at that time. I'm still against that. At the same time, I want to point something out to you. Is the U.S. government right now allowing Palestinians to come into the country? No, they're not. So The Biden-Harris administration does not have a Muslim ban, but they're still not allowing them to come in. This is something that could have been solved, right? If they were talking about helping the civilians in Gaza, and they could have brought, if they wanted to, the same way that they were able to bring Ukrainian refugees to the United States. If they wanted to, they could bring Palestinian refugees to the United States, but they don't want to. So just keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. So something I want to point out, why do you think that they're focusing on that particular piece? And I'm going to show you that poll. Mainstream media, corporate media is trying to convince the American people that Kamala Harris is doing better than she actually is. Now, when I show you the poll, especially MSNBC, come on, man, come on. This is something that she's leaving out. See, people, they pick out what is going to help Kamala and they omit what is not going to help her. So here's the poll that she's referring to. Here is the number that she cited. It says, turning to the presidential race, President Donald Trump, former president, VP Kamala Harris are virtually tied 42% to 41% with Arab American voters. So that's the piece of information that she chose to report on. However, somehow they just happen to look over the next line, which is right after it, which says, looking more closely with those that report they are very likely to vote. See, this is the difference. Trump leads Harris 46% to 42%. Now, you tell me, why would they leave that information out? If you notice, when I first told you about this poll a couple of nights ago, I told you both of those pieces of information. I read both lines to you. I said, this is the poll. It says they're virtually tied with Arab Americans. It also goes on to say, looking at it more closely with likely voters, Donald Trump is actually ahead of Kamala Harris. So why would Joy Reid omit that piece of information? There was just recently a video trending on Twitter. I can't play it on here because they have copyright. That network has copyright, so I can't play it on here, but you can find it. There's a video viral right now on Twitter, which shows someone going on a date with someone that is a producer at MSNBC. And the guy, he doesn't know he's being filmed. And the producer proceeds to say that MSNBC is trying to do everything that they can to help Kamala Harris in this presidential election. He also goes on to say that MSNBC has continued to make their viewers dumber by only pulling pieces of information, again, that they think is going to excite you. One of the things that she did ask him, why wouldn't they just tell them, everything? Why are they only choosing certain things? And he said, because they don't want to upset the base. So what MSNBC, and all of them do this, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News, they are picking out certain things. And this is not to say that they're necessarily changing the information, but they're choosing certain parts from the information that they're received that is going to do well with the audience that they have. That's what they're doing. That's going to make the audience happy. So a lot of people who are watching MSNBC and CNN more likely tend to be liberal or Democrats, correct? And a lot of people who watch Fox News more likely tend to be conservative. That being said, some people do watch all of them. But who's the majority of the base? So that's what they're trying to do. And I've been telling you for quite some time, because I said it does not make sense. If Kamala Harris is trailing behind Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton when it comes to the union voters, which I reported on last week, African-American voters, which I've also covered, Latino voters, and Muslim voters, if she's behind with all those groups, how is it as tight as they claim it is? How is she performing as well as they say that she is? Because they are picking certain pieces of information that make her look good. Now, here is what the Muslim voter poll shows you. Again, Muslim voters, not specifically Arab American. And this is the information people need to see. This is the CARE poll. And it says here, they surveyed Muslim voters, and it revealed that 29.4% of American Muslims plan to vote for Kamala Harris. And it's virtually tied with Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party, who follows closely with 29.1%. Now, notice Joy Reid is not discussing the CARE poll. She's discussing the poll that makes it look as though Kamala's performing so much better. So people need to see this, right? Now, it goes on to say, when it comes to the battleground states in particular, Dr. Stein is leading Harris in Arizona, 35% with Muslim voters. In Michigan, 40%. And in Wisconsin, 44%. Dr. Stein is leading Kamala in those three swing states. Kamala is leading in Georgia with 43%, Pennsylvania 30 and 37%. And Trump, for whatever reason, is beating Kamala Harris in Nevada with 27% of the Muslim vote. And Kamala Harris has 26%. So I don't know why he's in the lead there in Nevada. But this is the information that people really need to see, because the national poll that Joy Reid was telling you about for Arab American voters, that's fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, it comes down to those swing states. So why is Joy Reid not informing the viewers of what the CARE poll released when it comes to the swing states and the Muslim vote? Again, Arab American voters can be Arab American Christians, Arab American Jews. They can be Arab American non-secular. That doesn't mean that I just interviewed Rania Khalek. Rania Khalek is not religious. So this is what I'm trying to tell people. This is on purpose. Long story short, they are cherry picking information. They're cherry picking information, folks, to make it seem like she's doing better than she actually is. Now I want to show you something else. And this is interesting when it comes to gender. Kamala leads among Muslim male voters with 29%, but Jill Stein holds a stronger position among Muslim women at 34%. So as much as Kamala Harris is, choosing to stress the issue of a woman's right to choose, they've been talking heavily about that ever since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. For whatever reason, Muslim women voters in the swing states are favoring Jill Stein over Kamala Harris. Now, I interviewed Rania recently. That video premiered on Saturday. If you haven't seen it, watch it. But I want you to hear something about what Rania Khalek said for the people who are trying to shame Muslim voters, Arab American voters into supporting Kamala Harris because otherwise they might get Donald Trump. The lesser of two evils is even being applied to genocide. I want you to hear what Rania Khalek said about that. I think this was really important. How do you feel about that? Like where the voters feel, particularly those that are Muslim voters, but not just Muslim voters, also Arab American voters that are not Muslim, but they're Arab American?
I mean, at this point, I think it's really hard to make the argument to people whose families are being massacred that there's a lesser evil. Like what? I'm sorry. My family being massacred is the lesser evil. You're really going to try to convince me with a gun to my head to vote for somebody who is not only arming the people, destroying the lives of those that I love and my homeland, but on top of that is promising to continue to do it, right? Like everything's about Israel's right to self-defense, which is not self-defense. Bombing every country in your neighborhood is not self-defense. It's absolute insanity. And anybody else, it's their right to self-defense against you to be hitting you back. Lebanon has the right to defend itself against an invading force. Palestinians have a right to defend themselves against genocide. Iran has the right to retaliate when its sovereignty is violated and Israel bombs Tehran. Like that's self-defense, internationally speaking, and just morally speaking. But I mean, it's just explain to me how, I get it. If you're American, you don't have family in Lebanon or Gaza or anywhere in the Middle East and this doesn't affect you. Sure, there's these nuances between these parties. I'm not going to pretend there isn't. But really, like, okay, that to me just means it's okay for everybody else to just die in other parts of the world. And also, this country keeps moving to the right anyway. So as far as Arab American voters go, a significant chunk of them are not going to vote for the people that are destroying their families' lives. They're just not. They're going to vote third party. They're obviously, no one's happy about Trump. Like, would Trump be any worse or better on this? I actually don't know, because he's not in charge. Do I want him to be in charge? No. I also don't want these people to be in charge. I'm also just like, these people need to be punished. They are carrying out a genocide. I refuse to be put into a position where I am forced to choose between different flavors of Hitler. Hitler light and Hitler. Like, I refuse to participate in that. I absolutely refuse. And you know what? The onus is not on me or my community to vote for Democrats because we don't want a Republican elected. The onus is on the Democratic Party to not genocide my people.
So I think if you haven't had a chance to watch that interview, go watch it, because we talked about a lot of things. Obviously, not just that. We also talked about the creation of Hezbollah. We talked about the history of Lebanon. So it's a really informative interview. But I think Ronnie really hit the nail on the head there, because the reality is, how dare they like guilt shame these people? I mean, like, imagine if it were you. I mean, how would you feel if people were trying to bully you into supporting the same party that is actively, giving Israel the weapons to kill your people? How would you feel about that? But it's crazy stuff, guys. I told you they would take that poll and they would try to just say it was Muslim voters, or they would try to conflate the two to make it seem like Kamala is performing better than she is. So get comfortable, folks, because we're going to see more of that. Oh, buddy, we'll see more of that. Thank you for the super chat, Kinman. Sabby, do you like Crystal or Sagar more? Like more? I mean, I've never interacted with, I don't know either one of them, to be honest with you. But I think, Crystal is supposed to be the more left perspective. I used to watch them a lot when they were on Rising, like back in the day. But I think that I moved to the left of them. I moved to the left of Crystal. I do think they do some like good reporting, but I also think, Crystal will still defend the Democratic Party. And I think Sagar will try to defend conservatism, as much as possible, defend the Republican Party. And I'm not a party, any party. So this is what it is. Robert says, I think she was assuming. Birdfinger says, intentional. Sabby told us about this days ago. Joy Reid misuses info. Island Vibe says, all Arab are not Muslim and all Muslims are not Arab. Exactly. Alan, in Baltimore, they still sell bean pies and newspaper on the corner. Thank you, Kimmin. Ronnie Calic's family is Druze, not Muslim. Right. And in the interview, we talked about that she's not Muslim. She's not Christian. She's secular. Thank you, Money Making Bear. Jill Stein was blocked from the Nevada ballot. Yes, she was. And she talked about that recently on Breaking Points, about how they gave them the wrong forms. And, the Democratic Party is dirty, 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 dirty. But you know what? That's all right. It's all right. It sucks. But hopefully, if you're in Nevada, you'll be able to write her in Nevada. But yeah. Yeah. What is this, Skylar? Sabby, you should peep the Breaking Point story. Oh, I heard. Covering Ta-Nehisi Coates, Sagar is definitely anti-Black. This and his comments on Haitian immigrants were like, well, I told you guys. I noticed it when the way he was criticizing the BLM protests, the way that he was talking about the protesters, of course, like he not really trying to align with, look, he will try his best to align himself closer to whiteness. That's what he will try to do. I called it. I told you guys. Okay. If you haven't had a chance to do so, ladies and gentlemen, smash that like button. Thank you. And we are moving on to this next story. Jesus. North Carolina has been dealing with quite a bit since Hurricane Helene, and Lindsey Graham is not helping. not helping. Okay. And I want you to hear this because this is insane. This is insane. As much as we've talked about what has happened to residents in Asheville, North Carolina, what they're going through. You have people who have lost their entire lives, like their homes are gone. They don't know where they're going to go, what they're going to do, or if they'll be able to rebuild. I am from, not from North Carolina, but my family, my grandparents were born and raised in North Carolina, and then they moved to Baltimore, Maryland, which is where they had my parents, and my parents had me and all that jazz. But I went to high school in North Carolina, and I have quite a number of friends that still live in North Carolina. And I did reach out to those that are in Asheville. I was curious to see, how they're doing. From what I understand, some people have been able to get power back as of recent, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad from what I heard from my friends. I'm not talking about the news because, the news has said some things, and I'm kind of like, let me ask a friend of mine if that's the case. So it kind of depends on where you are in that particular area. So people are just going through it. And I have been through a number of hurricanes in my lifetime. I told you guys we used to have hurricane parties when I lived in the Carolinas, except if it was going to be like category 4 or something, we knew better. But we used to have like hurricane parties because they happen and they usually happen this time of year. But based on what I've seen so far and what I've heard from friends, this particular hurricane in Asheville, North Carolina is basically North Carolina's Hurricane Katrina. And there has been quite a bit of property damage and people have died. There have been lives that have been lost. Now I want you to think about that when you hear this BS that Lindsey Graham wants to say here when he's asked about the people in North Carolina. Listen to this.
You can thank Donald Trump and Elon Musk for that. I've been going all over South Carolina like most people. I hadn't slept much. But look what's going on in Israel. Our friends in Israel surrounded by people that want to kill them, destroy them, a second Holocaust in the making. And Biden says be proportional. What is the proportional response to people who want to kill you and your family? God. They're running out of ammunition in Israel. We have to help our friends to keep the war over there from coming here. They're willing to... You can thank Donald Trump and Elon Musk for that. I've been going all over South Carolina like most people. I hadn't slept much. But look what's going on in Israel. Our friends in Israel surrounded by people that want to kill them, destroy.
But look at what's going on in Israel. There is literally, you can see part of a building floating in water. In North Carolina, in Asheville, North Carolina. But Lindsey Graham wants you to ask about Israel. Lindsey Graham, I know. But let's talk about what's happening in Israel. I don't know how he can make it even more obvious to people. He's looking out for his donors. Lindsey Graham cares more about what's happening in Israel. Does everybody get that? See what I told you? These two parties, they don't care about either one of you. Neither one of these parties care about you. What is going on in Israel? When Sean Hannity, and I watched the full thing, when Sean Hannity is talking about what is happening to people in Asheville, North Carolina, who just lost their homes. And by the way, people didn't just lose their homes, people lost their jobs. Because there were businesses that were destroyed too. People trying to figure out where they're going to get money from, how they're going to continue to move on, if they're going to have to stay there, if they have to go somewhere else. But he wants you to talk about what's going on in Israel. The donor class has a tight hold on politicians in this country. So since Lindsey Graham doesn't want to talk about these people, I'm going to talk about these people. I want you to see something. Shout out to Shadow with Ezra. A woman from Western North Carolina in tears, recounts the horrific sight of seeing babies' bodies floating down the river. Brace yourself for this one.
Hey, y'all. So I'm safe in my house. our power came on. I have water and I'm so blessed. But the reports that are coming out of these towns in western North Carolina are horrific. The news is not even coming close to catching the true devastation. There are bodies that are floating down the river, babies. And if this is not a wake-up call that our government is not for us, then I don't know what is. They're everyday citizens who are taking it upon themselves to go and deliver items and things to these people. Anyway, pray for Western North Carolina. Don't believe everything that you're hearing on the news, because they're not. One of my friends in Canada had heard that there were like 200 people missing and maybe 40 dead. Y'all, so much more than that. At the local hospital in Nashville, there are over 900 unidentified bodies. And that was just from 2 days ago. So I'm sure there are more, but people are floating down the river. And if you're able and you can donate, or you can get it in the hands of a real person. There were like, I think 10 different truck drivers who were trying to deliver goods, and they all stopped on the way up there, and every single tire was flashed. And so it's going to be up to us. We cannot count on Uncle Sam.
Nope.
It's going to be neighbor helping neighbor. And I don't care how old or young you are. If you can't get out there or you can't donate, you can pray. Because the devastation is nothing like I have ever seen. And I think this is going to go down probably as one of the worst storms in American history. I just cannot fathom the pain and the destruction and the stuff that these people are going through. So anyway, just remember Western North Carolina, and listen to the people who are on the ground, not the news, because they don't know.
It's really sad. And something I want to point out as well is that as long as I can remember, I never remember Asheville, North Carolina having a flood. Because Asheville is in the mountains. So it's like, it's the western part of North Carolina. And typically, like during hurricane season, like they, for the most part, wouldn't have to worry about that. But I never remember Asheville flooding. And when you're not used to having to deal with that type of disaster, oftentimes the community is not prepared for that, or there isn't infrastructure. From what I heard from people who were actually there, not the news, from what I heard from people who were actually there was little to no warning. One person said that they were told it was just going to be rain. And there are obviously mudslides. So it's tough to hear, but you need to hear it, because I feel like I'm having Hurricane Katrina vibes and flashbacks all over again. Because I remember when Hurricane Katrina happened, I remember people were stranded. I remember people seeing footage of people standing on top of the roof of their house because the water was so high. It took the federal government a long time to actually, come in and respond. I remember, this is crazy. I remember country singer Tim McGraw got there to help people before the federal government did. Like, this is what I remember. I remember there were celebrities that were helping out people in New Orleans before the government did, which is crazy. And it's wild and insane when you think about it. But from what I understand, I guess it makes sense with Tim McGraw, because I think that's his home. I think that's where he's from. And here we go again. And I just want to remind everybody, after Hurricane Katrina, there were a number of people in New Orleans that were displaced. I remember there were people from New Orleans that were sent to Columbia, South Carolina. This is when I was at University of South Carolina. And I remember one of the people that moved into the apartment next to mine, because they told me, they said they were from New Orleans. And I'll never forget this. So get this. I had a 1-bedroom apartment. The apartment across from me was also a 1-bedroom apartment. They had that entire family in one bedroom apartment. All of them, grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, the kids, grandbabies, they were all in that one apartment. That's why I was really confused. I remember coming home from work, because I was waiting tables at the time too. I remember coming home from work and I remember thinking to myself, like, all of them? And they were very friendly. So I asked grandpa one time, I was like, all of you live in the same apartment? And he was like, yeah. I was like, isn't that a 1-bedroom apartment? And he was like, yeah. He said, they just put us where they could put us. He said, I don't think we'll ever be able to go back. How many of those families that were displaced after Hurricane Katrina, how many of those families were able to move back to New Orleans? I'm curious. And I'd be really interested to hear from those who lived in some of the other areas, because from what I understand, New Orleans, yes, they were able to rebuild some parts of New Orleans. But I've also heard from people that some of the people that were from some of the, I guess you would call them the rougher neighborhoods or whatever, in the New Orleans area, I heard from some people that those areas were never rebuilt, that some of those areas still look really bad, but they just kind of left it like it was. And so we're talking about displacement again, right? So I told you guys before, displacement happens because of different things. It's not just because of war. Like we talked about that a lot with Gaza, how Palestinians have become refugees and people have to move, they're pushed into different places, etc. You'll see that happening with the West Bank. You'll also see that that's going to happen with Lebanon. We'll get into the Lebanon thing in a second. But also weather. People get displaced because of weather. So if you're one of those people, if you're one of those families that lived in New Orleans prior to Hurricane Katrina and you were displaced and you were not able to go back to New Orleans, I would really love to hear from you. And actually, even if you were able to move back to New Orleans, but you weren't able to move back into the neighborhood you lived in because it's more expensive now, because again, they renovated the areas and there's gentrification, I would love to hear from you. Please email me. You can find my email address in the detailed description of all my videos, because this is what's going to happen with Asheville too. All those people aren't going to be able to stay there, especially like if your home is gone. And I'm willing to bet, because I've never heard of Asheville having a flood, I'm willing to bet most of those people did not have flood insurance. And one of the people that I know that lives in Asheville is a lawyer. And she said it's devastation, total devastation. So I'm really interested in hearing from the ones that were born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina, not people who moved there like later on. Asheville has become a little bit more expensive over the years, but it was kind of known as like an artsy, fartsy, kind of community in the mountains. I'm thinking about the people who were born and raised there, blue collar workers. These are the people that I'm thinking about. They'll probably be displaced permanently and maybe will never be able to come back to Asheville. You know why? Because when these types of disasters happen, you know who's lurking around? Investors. And when investors are lurking around, they're looking to see what property that they can buy up that's just been damaged, that they can renovate. They can soup it all up, make it look good. And then you'll never be able to go back there. Lindsey Graham, though, he wanted to talk about Israel. Apparently that was more important to him instead of this. Twin babies who died alongside their mom. They're the youngest known Hurricane Helene victims. I'll never get to know my grandsons. That was from the grandmother. Twin babies. Total devastation. Total devastation. And you know what? Here's another thing I want to mention. A lot of times people want to point to the victims and they say, well, why didn't you guys leave? Again, I'm telling you, from what I have heard from people there, they didn't get adequate warning. And two, I want to be very clear. Everybody can't afford to pick up their family and evacuate. Number of reasons. Financial reasons. You don't know how long you're going to be gone. Can you afford to pay for a hotel room for that many days? Remember, a lot of Americans are just one paycheck away from being homeless. So keep that in mind. 2, they may have kids. So it's not just you that you have to evacuate. It's also your children. And then the third one that a lot of people don't think about, which is pets. Not all hotels, in fact, a lot of hotels will not allow you to bring your pets in. A cat you might be able to get away with, dogs, not so much sometimes. It all depends. So that's another thing. That's another reason why some people don't leave, because they said, I got my dogs. Like, so I can't just take my dogs with me and just go stay in a hotel and hope that they'll let me stay there with my dogs. That's another thing too, that a lot of people don't want to get into, but the pet factor. But it's a classist mindset to assume that everybody can just pick up their stuff and they can afford to go live somewhere else for who knows how many days. Because it can be 2 days, it can be a week, it could be, you don't know how long it is going to be. And then to sit up there and see, our government want to give them $750. And is it even $750? Because based on this article, what I saw here, you're going to get into this, okay? Now, this is from WJCL. Georgia, on my mind. Did Helene leave you without power? How to get up to $750 for groceries. Now, here we go with the up to again. I don't know how many times this year we're going to see the up to. Kamala Harris, $25,000 down payment, went from $25,000 down payment to $25,000 tax credit to up to $25,000 on the website. Now we got $750 that is supposed to come from FEMA. Now they're saying up to $750. Which is it? Up to? For groceries. Now look at the wording again. Did Helene leave you without power? How to get up to $750 for groceries? Well, if you don't have power, where are you going to keep the groceries? You're not going to be able to get anything that's perishable. What if you have a baby? What if you have a baby that is still on formula? Or you have to put the bottles in the refrigerator. I don't know how this is working out. I'm just asking questions. Seriously, where are you going to store all the food? And people say, well, they can just get coolers and stuff like that. Okay. For all of it? Up to $750. Meanwhile, and this is where we got to point the fingers, right? Because meanwhile, our government has billions to give to Israel, Ukraine. And people say, well, the federal government, the money is coming from FEMA, not the federal government. And you guys need to point fingers at FEMA. Okay, what happened to all that money FEMA had? What happened to all that money? Do you guys know that some of the victims from Hurricane Katrina, it took people a long time to get those FEMA checks? You know how many people were sitting up there saying they were waiting on that check? How long is it going to take for Asheville? Now I want to point something out to you. After Hurricane Katrina, remember, Kanye West was on record saying George Bush does not care about Black people. It was him and Mike Myers standing right next to each other on national television. And I was like, whoa. I can't believe Kanye said that, but he did. Now you fast forward to Asheville, North Carolina, not a predominantly Black city. You're looking at some people who were born blue collar white people who grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, you had the gentrification come that way too, but not as many Black people in Asheville, North Carolina. So now you see they don't care about you either. What are we going to do about that? And I keep telling people, and listen, if you're watching and you're white and you're blue collar, I keep telling people that are watching the show, the number of times that you see the government just basically disrespect or disregard poor Black people or low-income Black people or Black people altogether, it's only a matter of time before they do something to you too. It's only a matter of time before they disregard you. It's only a matter of time till they say they don't care about you either. And now you see this happening in Asheville, North Carolina. But Lindsey Graham wants you to worry about Israel. Whoo! Let's go to the comments. Thank you, Roger Meadows, for the super chat. Jill Stein and Rudolph Ware is how you write them in. Yes, that's how you can write them in. Thanks, Kenman. Sagar is a white man in the body of an Indian. Oh my God. Thank you for this one, Kenman. When Sagar plays Jumanji, Avatar is David Duke. This is terrible, Kenman. Holy smokes. Thank you, Richard. Hi, Sabby. You hear about Rachel Blevin's YouTube shutdown? Yes, I did. Do you have a backup plan in case they come for you? Yes. So all of my shows are backed up on external hard drives. Plus, I'm also on Rumble and Rockfin as well. So yeah, I have backup. But yeah, that's messed up what happened to Rachel. It sucks. It seems like to me what I've noticed, and you guys can let me know how you feel about this. It seems like they're coming after people who either work for RT or are based in Russia, like Mark Sloboda is in Russia, for example. Rachel worked for RT. It seems like they're coming after those people. Same thing with Fiorella, also worked for RT. That's what it seems like. But yeah, all my stuff is backed up. Thank you, Andrea. North Carolina, Ohio, and Hawaii should all break from the union. The only thing this whole situation proved is that the federal government and every agency is irrelevant. Thank you, Roger. Rudolph in Delaware, Iowa, Illinois, Kansas. Oh yeah, these are ones, the write-ins. Delaware, Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, North Dakota, New York, Vermont, Wyoming, and DC. Yeah. Thank you for that, Roger. Thank you, Andrea. Miss Lindsey is a war pig. Treason is treason. And you know what? I don't know why people continue to vote for him. And I lived in South Carolina. I don't get it. I never understood why people continue to vote for this guy. It's really weird. Thank you, Mary. And this is why they really want to censor social media and limit the flow of us helping each other. MSM won't tell the truth. That's right. Thank you for this as well. Roger says, Rockfin. Yes, I'm going to get to that. And thank you, Susanna. What if Asheville were predominantly, I don't know that it's not. Like, that's the thing. I don't know that it's not. But at the end of the day, it just seemed like to me, the government cares more about Israel and Ukraine than they do about us. Because that's their vested interest. You know, I mean, when you're donors, like, again, if AIPAC is donating to you, if the Israeli lobby is donating to you, if you have, donors that are a part of the military industrial complex, that is going to be your priority, not your constituents. Shall we move on? It's getting spicy. It's getting spicy up in here, honey. Yeah. All right. We have an update about the Diddy situation, and I want to start with the update, and then we're going to kind of transition into the Jaguar Wright appearance on Piers Morgan. Now, it appears here that Houston lawyer Tony Busby reveals he is representing over 120 Diddy accusers, 60 men, 60 women, with some claiming to have been victimized as young as 9, 14, and 15 years old. This is important for people to hear. Let's dive in.
The feckless and cowardly keyboard warriors love to attack. We know what we're up against. We did not enter this fray blindly. I wish it was my last such fray. I wish this type of behavior wasn't so pervasive. But it is what it is, so we will press on. As I said, our law firms have been retained by 120 individuals at this point to pursue cases in civil court against Sean Diddy Combs. You should know, in this group, it is evenly divided between males and females. There are 60 males and 60 females who have joined us to pursue these claims as plaintiffs. In this group, 62% identify as African American, 30% are white, and the remainder are Hispanic or Asian. The victims are from more than 25 states. Majority are from California, New York, Georgia, and Florida. I want to focus on the ages of these victims. When you talk about the ages of the victims when the conduct occurred, it's shocking. Our youngest victim at the time of the occurrence was 9 years old. We have an individual who was 14 years old. We have one who was 15.
And this is where I want to pause, because this is something I want to point out. Again, these are just those that came forward that they're representing. There's a lot of focus from people about this particular Diddy case, and people are pointing towards celebrities. So there's a lot of focus on whether it's, Jay-Z, Usher. I keep hearing Justin Bieber's name over and over again, but a lot of people pointing to this person was at a Diddy party. That person was at a Diddy party. You were at a Diddy party. And just because someone was at the party doesn't mean that they participated in this type of behavior, that they participated in trafficking or violating people in any type of way. So I just want to be very clear about that. However, what I have noticed is people seem to be kind of quiet about the fact that there are victims that were minors, that were allegedly minors. And I'm not hearing as many people focus on that. We're talking about, he said 9 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old. And I think that more people do need to talk about that, right? So I don't really want to hear that Ashton Kutcher may have been there. I don't want to hear that so-and-so may have been. Like, these people were of age at that point in time. And just because they were at the party doesn't mean they participated in trafficking. But minors? Minors. 25 of the 120 individuals who are plaintiffs in these cases were minors at the time of the acts complained of. The time frame of the acts complained of is very wide. The conduct at issue spans from the years 1991 all the way till this year, 2024. If you wonder why there are so many alleged victims, that's your answer. We're talking about more than 25 years of this type of conduct. Now, although most of the victims who have stepped forward were victimized after 2015, this has been going on for a very long time. And speaking of a very long time, again, we got to keep saying allegedly, but speaking for a very long time, Jaguar Wright has been on Piers Morgan to talk about this very long time recently. And Jaguar Wright has done a number of interviews, and this isn't new. I think the first time I saw an interview with her, this was years ago when she was calling out what some of the music artists and producers were doing to other artists in the music industry. And she had mentioned a number of names. So this goes back a couple of years, the first time I heard her talking about this. I hope Jaguar Wright has some type of protection. But recently she was on Piers Morgan's show, and there's a couple of things that she said there that I do want to highlight as well, because she also points out that it wasn't just Diddy, and that Diddy was basically, allegedly groomed to do what he did by people above him who did the same thing. We had talked about Clive Davis on this show before in reference to the phone call that Suge Knight made from prison to Chris Cuomo on News Nation. So we have discussed this type of thing before. It's not just Diddy. Then some of you may be wondering, why is it that they haven't gone after other people? And there's something I'm going to show you after this clip that makes me wonder why, if this is the reason why they chose to target him. But let's get into this here. Now, I will forewarn you, heads up, and you take this and you can decide at your own, on your own accord. But some people do say that Jaguar Wright doesn't have evidence for some of the things that she's saying. So some people are just like, yeah, is all of this true? Maybe some of it may be true, maybe some of it not be true. So I do want to put that out there, that there have been a number of people that have pushed back, and they said that she does not have evidence for some of the things that she's saying. Now, who is she? She is a musician, but apparently, according to her, she said she was a sex worker prior to being a musician, and that's how she was introduced to the industry. So let's go ahead and get in here.
A lot of people have been questioning, well, she doesn't really know him. She has no knowledge of him. She doesn't have a picture with him. I'm smarter than Claudia Jordan. I would never take a picture with the devil. Everyone knew he was the devil. He's been the devil for 30 years. He's been covered and protected by not only Clive Davis, but Lucian Grange. He was selected to be the demon that he is, to keep the culture in line so the industry could continue to rape it for all of its precious jewels. We have too many lost. The list of lost is ridiculous. And everyone knows Diddy was selected for this job. He's the Judas.
Do you think that if he's cornered in the way that he's been now, that he may start revealing things about other people?
He has no choice. His ego and his drug addiction won't allow him to do anything different. Anybody who thinks he's not going to talk is crazy. The simple fact that he's not saying more now only means that the people who have been protecting him all along, who put him in position to be such a horror to the Black community, still find value in him. He's got everybody on tape. They all know it. It's a mess.
For those.
So that's something I want to bring up as well. This idea that she said that, you know, it sounds like he will talk, or you're crazy if you think that he's not going to talk. So is he protected? Is he in a protected space in prison? Because I think we all know, remember Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't know. I do think if he does talk, I think that's probably pretty much, based on what I've read, and I've read a lot about this, that's probably basically the end of what we know of as the music industry. Because I've read a number of articles about this. I've watched a number of interviews about this from people that worked with him, not from just hearsay people, but his former bodyguard, etc. And it just seems like, to me, it seems like there were so many people involved that are in the music industry. And it seems like if he does talk and he starts naming names, that we could be possibly looking at the entire music industry going down.
You were never at these freak-off parties. What were they like?
See, this is the thing. Everything that I'm about to say to you is not my firsthand knowledge. It is my firsthand witness account experience. I was a sex worker. I was a dominatrix before I got my record deal. That's how I know how the dark world and the sex world and the entertainment world run hand in hand. That's why the movie Blink Twice is so important. Salute to Zoe Kravitz.
I have not seen that movie yet, and a number of people told me that I need to watch Blink Twice. So that's another one that's on my list.
The sex workers that I have worked with throughout the years and continue to work with even to this day have worn hidden cameras. I have my own tapes. I've seen what they do. The ritualistic behaviors, the drugging, putting girls in the suitcases, dumping them in alleyways. It's horrifying. And it's
So that was something interesting too, that she said that she has her own tape. So that makes me wonder if the feds are going to contact her next. I mean, if she's alleging here that she also has tapes, are they going to, raid, her home as well? Are they going to contact her? Will she be forced to testify? I don't know.
All done under the protection of, this is going to be paid off. There's another NDA. This is going to be, it's terrible.
It seems to have been something that people a lot of people knew about, but people were simply too scared to talk about?
Everyone knows. And every person that's sitting there trying to act surprised knows very well. The whole point of this, like Cat Williams said when he sat with Shay Shay earlier this year, the whole point of this is for them in a coordinated effort to pretend like none of it is real for the public's perception. But everyone knows what's going on, and it's been going on for years. It's been going on before Diddy. See, people keep looking at him like he's the Sputnik that came out of nowhere. This is someone who was designed to be what he is. We got to stop making ditties.
Pause there for just a second, and I want to chime in. The statement that she made when she said everybody knows, it makes me wonder, do all of those people also know about the alleged minors that were victims, like people that were underage that were, listen, I gotta tell you something. Look, can we talk for a minute? Can we just be real? Okay. You know, I remember like during the 90s, I remember seeing on MTV, Wanya Morris from Boyz II Men was dating Brandy. And I love the group Boyz II Men, and I love Brandy. Like Brandy was probably I was probably Brandy's biggest fan. I loved me some Brandy. And I just remember thinking to myself, even then, like, Brandy's a kid. Brandy's underage. Wanya is a grown man. Nobody is saying anything about this grown man dating this teenage girl. I don't know. And I'm like, is it just me? Am I the only one that feels this is kind of weird? Kind of weird. A lot of people point to Aaliyah and R. Kelly, right? That, you know, they lied about her age. They got married and all that kind of stuff. Lied about the age so they could get married. And I think that was probably one of the bigger ones. But I feel like a lot of people slept on the Wanya and Brandy situation. And Brandy's mother was her manager. And now I'm seeing videos and interviews that are saying that Brandy's mother was the one who initiated the relationship, allegedly, with Wanya and Brandy. And my mother would never have introduced me to a grown man. Does everybody? I don't understand. I don't get these parents. I don't get these parents that handed their kids over. Like, I did not know, and I was lost on this. I had no idea that Justin Bieber, that Usher had custody of Justin Bieber. I didn't know that. How does this happen? How do parents hand their kid over to some random adult who says, I'm going to make your kid a star? You don't know these people. You don't know these people. And my mother, and especially my father, there's no way in hell they would have ever introduced me to a grown man. And there would have never been no, let's hang out together with each other without my parent present. There was never been none of that. So when she says this been going on these things have happened for a long time. It's not every parent. But I always question the parents. How do you just hand your child over to some random adult? I don't.
And if we're going to do that, then we got to go back. We got to go back to even further, the mentors of these people. Because Diddy was taught how to do what he does systematically. And Clive Davis has been his greatest teacher.
Look, Clive Davis is not here to respond to that. Jaguar,
guess they're on vacation.
If this goes to court, Jaguar, do you think the world is going to be shocked by what comes out?
Oh, absolutely. I just don't know why they are. It's been happening in front of everyone's faces for decades. For decades.
How many victims?
What's the difference between me and Judy Garland? Social media.
Judy Garland. And this makes me wonder, is this part of the reason why Judy Garland Garland, maybe they were saying, well, Julie Garland was on drugs or whatever. Maybe Judy Garland was introduced to that. Maybe it was given to her without her permission. We saw the statement from Eve where Eve said that it was Janet Jackson who Eve said she was at I believe like an event or whatever. And she said that somebody slipped something into her drink. And she said it was Janet Jackson who told her what to do to get out of that frame of mind, to help her not feel drugged or whatever. And that makes you wonder, so did someone try to do that to Janet Jackson? So this stuff just goes around, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, when you think of all these child actors and they say, what happened to that kid? They were the child star and then they just ended up becoming a drug addict. Did they just end up becoming that way, or were they giving those kids drugs? Were they slipping things into their drink? Were they doing that to Britney Spears? Because let's remember, it's not like she just started off becoming, a pop singer. She was on the Mickey Mouse Club along with Justin Timberlake. So you got to think back on some of these things. Were they doing those things to those kids? Were they slipping things to Judy Garland and getting her hooked on those things? And then abusing her? And then people wonder what happened to Julie Garland? This is insane. This is insane.
How many victims?
There was none for her.
How many victims potentially do you think there could be?
Thousands. I've talked to hundreds that I deal with still myself. I think people should really look into that more.
They have weird edits for this interview. I don't know why.
I am friends with Albie Shore. I love him. I love his children. I knew Kim. We used to all hang out together at the Kit Kat Club back in the mid-90s when Diddy was first starting his reign. I watched that whole thing happen. And everything that Albert has been through, every attempt on his life that has been ignored by the authorities, it all leads back to Diddy. And everyone knows it.
And you wonder what happened to some of these people, because Albie Shore, for those who don't know, Albie Shore was an R&B singer, great voice. My parents, I think my mom really liked Albie Shore or whatever. And great voice. And then all of a sudden, these people just disappear. You're like, what happened to these people? And I told you guys this before, how I felt some kind of way about Diddy making these one-hit wonder artists, and then they just disappear and you don't know what happened to them. Like, what happened to these people? And it's just, was this done to all these artists? And it really also makes me wonder about Mary J. Blige, because remember, it was Diddy that discovered her, right? So did this happen to Mary J. Blige too? Was she also abused?
The wiretapping of the phones, putting AirTag on children during visits. These are normal practices that these people do.
Jaguar, I got to leave it there. I really appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much.
But it doesn't end there, because there was something else that she said, and I don't know why, but I noticed on that interview, it seemed like there were different cuts. So there were things that they edited out. But I want you to hear what she said here about Jay-Z as well.
Know why there's no vindication for me? Because for 4 years, I've been screaming, not just Diddy, but Diddy and Jay-Z are monsters. And the victim-making machine kept going on.
Jay-Z has been notable by his silence since these charges were brought against Diddy. Why do you think that is?
Because that's what he does. He starts little fires everywhere. Forces everyone involved to go and carry water while he sneaks away without a response. That changes now, Sean. You must respond. You have no choice. Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Robert Kelly, Sean Combs have one person in common, professionally and privately. Sean Carter. This has been a fist of tyranny that has been punching through our culture and our society for decades. It must stop.
There's been obviously a lot of
cruelty-free artistry.
Right. There's been a lot of.
So again, Sean Carter is Jay-Z, but notice what she said there. How she said Epstein, Weinstein, Diddy, all had one person in common, and that was Jay-Z.
Rumor mill about what has happened in the rap world. A lot of allegations that the misogyny in the lyrics clearly was based on a general misogyny towards women away from the music. And that clearly seems to have been borne out by these charges against Diddy, which if he's found guilty of all this, he's never coming out of prison. How dangerous do you think?
Thank God.
How dangerous do you think he is as a person?
I think he's one of the most dangerous people I've ever met. A lot of people have been questioning, well, she doesn't really know him. She has no knowledge of him. She doesn't have a picture with him. I'm smarter than Claudia Jordan.
Yeah, and we heard that part there. So something that I want to mention, another thing, we were talking about the underage thing. Something else that was brought to my attention, Jay-Z, how old was Beyonce when Jay-Z started dating Beyonce? How old was Foxy Brown when Jay-Z was dating Foxy Brown? And then that brings up the situation with someone like Rihanna. And you guys got to tell me how you feel about this, because this never sat right with me. From what I understand, Rihanna was a teenager when she came to the United States. And from what I understand, she came here by herself. Could you imagine? And it makes you wonder, did something happen where, again, we don't know, but did something happen to Rihanna? Where was the guardianship? Where was mom? Where was dad? Again, I don't understand how people can just hand their child over to some random person, I don't care famous or not, and take them across the ocean to another country. And it just, again, underage. And it's not just the hip hop industry. Let's be clear. It's not just hip hop industry, because you have musicians from like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rolling Stone. Also, we're dating underage women. And again, it's just like Jerry Lee Lewis. We can go on and on. And it just, so the question comes to this, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you are wondering this. Out of all the people that they're saying are involved, why would they go after Diddy? Why didn't they go after others? Well, someone sent this to me. I don't want to mention their name on here because I don't know if they want people knowing their name like that. But someone sent this to me and I didn't know about this. I'd never seen this video before. And Charlamagne the God is in this interview, and I think you guys want to hear this. Could this be part of the reason why they decided to target him and not others that are alleged to be involved? I never saw this interview. Listen to this. Oh, let me get my volume.
And it's called Our Black Party. Okay. It's time for us to have our...
Let's, I'm trying to get it from the beginning.
That I've ever launched. And it's called Our Black Party. Okay. It's time for us to have our own black political party, unapologetically. Because right now, if you look at the debates, we're not even a part of the conversation. Not at all. We're not a part of the conversation. We don't have any political power. We don't have any political leverage. And so we started Our Black Party with some young, fearless black activists, elected officials, and I've stepped up and put the money behind it. Mm-hmm. This is the biggest threat and the only option that we have right now as far as making a change, taking our own self-responsibility and accountability to be educated and empowered with our vote.
So what's the goal for our Black Party?
Our Black Party's number one goal is to unify behind a black agenda. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. You could be a part of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, you could be an independent, but if you're black, you wasn't born Republican, you wasn't born Democrat, you wasn't born independent, you was born black. Mm-hmm. And we have to seize our political power. because it'd just be more the same, being pushed this way, being pushed that way, and we expecting a different result. But the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over the same way, expecting a different result, and it's not going to happen. So we have to change the tone. We got to start with us stepping up and really taking the responsibility and accountability to be a part of this political movement.
So that was sent to me again. I never, ever saw this interview. Never heard about it. And it makes you wonder. Apparently, he wanted to start a party for Black Americans. He wanted to start a political party for Black Americans. And so a number of people that have said that, why are they only going after him? Why didn't they go after other people that they know were involved as well? Like, why is it just bring him down? Why not bring other people that were part of, because he wasn't alone, that other people were a part of this as well. And then this was sent to me and they said, do you think maybe this is the reason why they went after him and not the others? Because he wanted to start a Black political party? I don't know. What do you guys think? I saw someone in the chat say that was a couple years ago. Yeah, I never saw it. Never saw it. Never heard of it. Never, saw the interview. And it makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. But I thought that was interesting. It's crazy times out here, folks. If he does talk, if he does decide to name names, get your popcorn first. I would say don't stand anybody, because you might end up hearing a name of someone that you might be fond of. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Glenn. One, the $750 is a loan. And two, if you have homeowners insurance, you are not eligible for the loan, ? 4 more years. The FEMA money gone to their fascist friends or criminals let out there in here. Thank you. I know myself. Israel rumored to now recruit soldiers from Africa. I heard about that. Karen says there were the PG parties and X-rated Diddy parties. Right. That's why I keep saying, guys, just because someone was at the party doesn't mean they participated in that. Ravina says, yeah, if she's lying, why isn't she being sued or at least had a cease and desist? That's a good question as well. Thank you, New York. 3 things can be true at the same time. She could be bitter, crazy, and correct. Thank you, Measured Men. You all might think things are made up. We have rescued lots of children, and we have a 14-year-old now ready to testify to Congress, Guardians of Equality. IG been doing this work 6 years. Interesting. Thank you, Phyllis. Jaguar waited 25 years to tell. Why now? I don't know. Ask her. Thank you, Jasmine. I never knew about Brandy going through that, but some parents have been like that for ages, selling their children to adults for wealth and status. Child marriage is still legal in America in some places. Interesting. Weird. Thank you for the super sticker, Salt and Pepper Natural. Thank you, Roger. Al B had a terrible voice. We used to clown him. I don't know. He sounded great on the record. I don't know how he was live. Thank you, R. Lee. Some say Jaguar is a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, some people do say that. Some people say she doesn't have evidence. Thank you, Diamal. Jay-Z's alleged baby mama was 16 at the time. Thank you, Anthony. I am behind in the vid, but there's supposed to be lithium in those hills. Oh, in Asheville. Thank you, Salt and Pepper. I got to perform for Al B when I was in elementary with my classmates. He genuinely appreciated our performance and talked to each of us. Wow, interesting. Thank you, Helpful Harm. False Flag, Carter and all are under Massa. This is to distract from Trump's powers, oil and weapons dynasty. Interesting. Thank you, Roger. Feox was 16 when Jay-Z and Nas pointed that out in Esther. Huh. Thank you, PB Hardy. Wow, I used to think 9.5 weeks was risque. And shout out to Juanita for the super sticker. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, folks, let's go ahead and smash that like button. And we're going to move to our next story here. So, ladies and gentlemen, It appears that Anna Kasparian from TYT has been, over the past year, I think, rubbing some people on the left the wrong way, more so the progressive left the wrong way, because some of the statements that she has made, whether it's been about homeless people, which I covered before, and some of the comments that she's made about the LGBTQ community, people who watch TYT, people who are part of that progressive base are sitting back and they're asking, like, what is happening to this woman? What is happening to TYT? Well, apparently she has now officially written a statement about leaving the left. So yes, this is her why I left the left moment. We knew it was coming. I think a lot of you knew it. And she is saying that she is independent and unaligned. So let's get into this. I'm going to tell you what I think is really happening here. Independent and unaligned. You're right. I've changed. So this is from Anna Kasparian. Here we go, folks. Oh boy. Oh boy. After Trump came onto the political scene, especially after he was elected in 2016, the us versus them mentality immediately took shape. Anyone who refused to resist Trump was seen as a threat to our country, and I was fully on board with that mindset. It all felt righteous at first, but eventually the tactics deployed to fight Trump became repetitive, boring, and ultimately fruitless. Polling shows that he has increased his support among Blacks and Latino voters, despite wall-to-wall coverage on his unsavory, racist, or bigoted remarks. Several years of media raising the alarm over Trump's threat to democracy has only resulted in a tight presidential race between himself and Kamala Harris. But you know what? That shows you just how bad the Biden administration has been. That shows you how people feel about the Biden-Harris administration. And this is why, again, I point back to this. Remember, Barack Obama was not ready to endorse Kamala Harris. He was even quoted saying he preferred an open primary, because I'm pretty sure he knew that it would be like this, that it would be this. And I don't even think it's as close as they saying it is, but he knew that she would have difficulty trying to beat Donald Trump, because she is still a part of the Biden-Harris administration. And a lot of people are frustrated with this current administration. I can't help but acknowledge that the only thing that was accomplished by resisting Trump was less understanding and more division among Americans. I personally became reluctant to challenge my side or engage with voters who disagreed with me. In turn, I became less knowledgeable about the people in the world around me. I saw Republican voters as an evil monolith, and that was a big mistake. This is something that was a big problem, I think, in the progressive space, where you were kind of told, like, by progressive commentators that, like, anybody who voted for Trump is racist or evil. I think at one point I remember Kyle Kulinski saying, like, people are going to try to tell you that Trump is like this greatest evil. He was like, but no, Bernie is a better option. So you should push for, Bernie. This was back for Bernie 2020. So that's when there still was a progressive presidential candidate. But since then, things have changed, because there's no progressive candidate that was able to win over what is ever left of the progressive base. Marianne Williamson, that wasn't it. And I told people about it early on. This ain't gonna be it. So there was no one else to fill that Bernie spot that was able to garner as much support and energy from the progressive base like, the Bernie could. So what ended up happening is a lot of those channels that were able to grow off of Bernie Sanders' campaign found themselves kind of in a sticky situation, because now it was like, what do you do? Because Biden won. So you can't just use your channel criticizing Trump the whole time because he's not in office. And you can't push and promote Bernie because he's not running. Biden won. So what do you do? And this is where I think we saw some of them try to move over and defend Biden and push Biden and promote Biden to try to expand their base a little bit in order to grow their channels. And this was basically becoming the slow death of the Bernie Sanders movement that we saw happening. She goes on to say, I was told by, where am I? Sorry. Here we go. My evolution started in 2022 when I know about this, but she was sexually assaulted by a homeless man. She said, in her neighborhood as she was walking her dog. The horrible experience alone didn't change me politically, but the treatment I received from the far left and some progressives after sharing the story did. I was told that by publicly sharing what happened to me, I was stigmatizing my unhoused neighbors. Others accused me of feeding into racist tropes because they assumed that my attacker was Black, but I had never even disclosed the man's race. He was white. So I just want to push back on this a little bit here. The pushback I think that she received about the criticisms that she gave about the unhoused community was her saying that they should be in jail. You know, so that was the pushback where she was saying, like, I'm tired of all these homeless people. They should just be in jail. Just lock them up. Just criminalize them. She was advocating for criminalizing homelessness. So that's where the pushback came from what I remember. I don't remember people pushing back because she was assaulted. I remember people pushing back because she wanted homeless people to be locked up. She goes on to say, not only did I suddenly see the flawed thinking of some on the left, I also witnessed their cruelty and hypocrisy in real time. These terrible traits that I had associated solely with my political opponents were obviously not exclusive to their tribe. I was stupid for ever thinking that was the case. That doesn't mean everyone on the left thinks or behaves in the way that this small group of lunatics do. Far from it. But it doesn't mean that there are factions and flaws on both sides of the aisle and no one has a monopoly on truth. Then there was the insane reaction to one of my tweets in March 2023. Yeah, I remember this. A lot of people got mad after this one. So she tweeted, I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this shit. So yeah, a lot of people, I do remember this. A lot of people on the left were very angry at her about this tweet. She goes on to say, all hell broke loose after I posted those words. Most friends in left-wing media didn't bother reaching out privately to discuss their agreement with my personal preference. Instead, many self-described socialists took it upon themselves to profit from conflict by publicly attacking me with monetized videos. The same thing that you did. So for those who are not aware of Anna Kasparian, TYT, etc., like, I don't want you to hear this and feel like pity, because the reality is she was doing the same thing. She was making videos about people too that were monetized and profit off of other people, calling other progressives certain names and things too. She did it as well. So everybody, let's just call it what it is. She did the same thing. Now, I guess she wanted those people to contact her privately. And I guess I do understand that. I don't know her. I've never met her. I've never interviewed her. I have never contacted her in any way, shape, or form. I don't know how to contact her. But I guess what she's saying is that the people who were friends with her, they should have just reached out to her privately instead of making videos about it. Now, to that, I will say this. It is kind of weird sometimes when I see people who I know are really close and they'll make a video about one of the others and attacking them and calling them names instead of trying to have the conversation in private. That to me is kind of weird. But when it's someone that you don't really know like that, or you're not close to or whatever, and you're criticizing them or whatever, or you don't have a way to contact them, I guess I understand that because you have no way of contacting them to have this conversation with them. But the reality is, I feel like Anna's trying to make herself seem like I'm a victim here because of the way the left treated me. And so here's my why I left the left story, and you should have pity with me and feel sorry for me or whatever. And I'm like, come on, because you've said some really nasty things about a lot of us. It's just reality. A small leftist. So she don't want to name the show. That's what's interesting too. She doesn't want to name the show. A small leftist YouTube show put out 5 separate videos skewering me about the tweet while conveniently erasing the advocacy I had done on behalf of the transgender community throughout my career. They even went as far as drawing a link between my tweet and trans, we'll say unalives here, which sadly wasn't the most unhinged outcome of the debacle. So I thought it was interesting how she just says a small left YouTuber show. Nobody knows what you're talking about. You didn't mention those people. We don't know who you're talking about. You didn't say the name. TYT's volunteer YouTube chat moderators quit over the tweet, and someone reported me to HR. Oh no, not HR. So this makes me wonder, like, what kind of space is TYT? Like, it just sounds like, how is that any different from corporate media? You got reported to HR. Like, what is this? Like, what? I don't. Okay. An on-air transgender contributor even resigned from the company after being urged by online mobs and leftist shows to do so. Again, you have done the same behavior, Anna. Curious that not one of those shows hired her after she took their advice. That's probably because they don't have the resources that TYT does. That's probably because they don't have $20 million that was given to them by Jeffrey Katzenberg. And Anna knows this. I never apologized for the tweet, and I never will. That whole experience forced me to come to terms with the intolerance on the left, and it allowed me to publicly reject the ideological shackles that kept my world small and less informed. Today, I'm less certain and more curious than I was 4 years ago. I've made humiliating mistakes while covering political news because I was previously unwilling to consider or understand the perspective of Americans who vote differently from me. So apparently, she started this Substack now called On a Line, and she's gonna, write articles here. But let me tell you what I think is really going on here. So again, I think that there has been a shift. There has been a change after the Bernie campaigns. Again, like Bernie Sanders ran twice in a row. He didn't win in 2020. And after that, I think, like, for example, if Trump would have won again in 2020, then I think that Anna and some of the other shows that came from like that Bernie movement, they probably still would have been able to, make videos just bashing Trump and pushing and promoting Bernie Sanders. But because Trump lost in 2020, they again had to find, okay, what do we do now? Because Biden won. So a lot of them ended up jumping on that Biden train. TYT kind of has been all over the place since Biden won. They'll criticize him, but again, they'll say, but Trump is so bad and so horrible. And we can look at the channel here in just a second to show you as well how they're performing recently. But the reality is, here's what I think is trying to happen. It almost kind of seems like Anna is going to take on this Sagar and Jetty-like role on TYT for the Cenk and Anna shows, because Cenk Progressive was just running for president. We ain't gonna talk about that again. Was just running for president through the Democratic Party as a challenge to Biden at that point in time. He's ran for Congress himself about a year ago or so. He wanted to support Rick Caruso, who was, I guess, a former Republican who was running for mayor in Los Angeles at one point. And I think that what is happening now is that it seems like TYT may try to take a breaking points position where maybe Cenk Uygur is still there to represent, the Democrat side, and Anna's role may evolve into a role that is less attached to the Democratic Party and maybe will be more of an independent voice. So that'll pull over different viewers. And I think that it's interesting because I just remember like Anna in particular, some of the things that she said to those of us that just didn't want to support, like just didn't want to continue along with this journey of trying to put progressive through the Democratic Party. I remember some of the things she said to us online. I'm still blocked by Anna Kasparian. I've never even talked to this person. It's really weird. I've never even talked to, so I'm still blocked by her on Twitter. It's kind of strange. Her views on policing also became kind of cringe over the past year or so. There's a number of things that she said that she knew she didn't advocate for, I would say, prior to Biden winning, the election. And I think that, she still has a number of positions that she's still good on. Like, she's still good on Israel, obviously, and Gaza, especially genocide. She's talked about what it's like for her people because she's Armenian and there was an Armenian genocide. So she's able to have some of that perspective. But it seems like to me that now some of the Bernie campaign channels are starting to try to figure out what to move to. And some of them jumped on the Biden wave and then the Kamala wave. And I don't know. It really kind of makes you feel like people just don't really have true feelings about the issues, that they're just jumping on one thing to the next because that's what's going to help them grow. And I remember before I had this show, I used to think to myself that I could never imagine some of the people that are pushing Kamala Harris, especially considering the fact that we have a genocide. I could never have imagined those people going along with that. I could have never have imagined it. And these were people that, had told us no, you gotta stand your ground, and people that said, no, they weren't going to vote for Hillary, and people that said that, no, I'm not going to vote for Biden. And it's just really weird. It's all of a sudden they were able to just put aside Medicare for all, put aside the progressive policies that they claim to champion for. And I still support those policies and I still advocate for them. And those people will call me right wing. That's the crazy part. Whereas you guys have just accepted, okay, no, let's not talk about that anymore. Let's just do anything Democrat because it's not Donald Trump. Now, if you look at TYT right now, and I'm going to show you what I mean by this, TYT has over 6 million subscribers, a lot. They've been around for a long time, over 6 million subscribers. However, if you look at the content, and this is what I noticed. So let's go to videos. They have over 6 million subscribers. So let's go to a video that was released yesterday, because I want to be fair. Let's not do one that was released today. If you have over 6 million subscribers, look at the view count. This video, Trump won't release his medical records, 84,000 views. Nurse's idea for curbing gun violence goes viral, 91,000 views. Those are a lot of views, but they have 6 million subscribers. Breaking Points gets more views than some of the, and I'll show you just by comparison. So you can see again, Hurricane Hysteria, 86,000 views. Judge doesn't hold back during MAGA County Clerk Centering, 125,000 views. 125,000 views is great. It's amazing. Again, these people get way more views than I do. But if you have 6 million subscribers, you should be, let's go to Breaking Points. Hold on. And we'll go to Breaking Points because it's newer and they have less subscribers, but their videos, let's go to videos. I just want to show you guys. And again, we'll do the same thing. We'll go to, we'll go to 3 days ago, I guess. So Breaking Points has 1.35 million subscribers, 1.35 million. Watch this. 3 days ago. This video, CBS ambushes Ta-Nehisi Coates over Israel apartheid book, over 140,000 views. The interview with Jill Stein, 79,000 views. We can go on. Shall I go on? Kamala slim lead in the tightest race history, 86,000 views. Amazon weaponized DOJ, 31,000 views. That was 6 hours ago, 2 days ago. So the point that I'm trying to make to you is this, folks. Breaking Points has 1.35 million subscribers, and they have more views than TYT does. TYT has over 6 million subscribers. So to me, that says a couple of things. Either people became bored with you, Maybe people got tired of hearing about Trump, which I've heard that from people too. They're kind of tired of it. Or those maybe people that subscribed years ago just didn't unsubscribe. So I don't know, but it seems like to me, maybe there may be some type of pivot there, at least on Anna's end, and maybe that'll help them bring in other viewers. But I think we all knew this day was coming. Let's go to the comments here. We're going to go to the comments. Yeah. Sorry. I forgot to click these away. Thank you, Anthony. I'm behind in the Oh, sorry. I did that one already. Oops. Sorry about that. Let me jump ahead. I don't know where I left it. Here we go. Eskimo. We love you, Sabby Sabs. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you, Eskimo. Love you too. Thank you, Sparky. Good to see you. Love, Sabby. Love. Great work. Thank you. Shout out to P. Smith, who's been a member for 13 months. Imagine being deplored by the party that sucks. Brett Weinstein, Jill Stein for president. Thank you for that. And thank you, IBN. There's a shift of conservatives speaking how traditional values are anti-capitalist and pro-worker, union, family, etc. I think she's going that way. Could be. I don't know, honey. I don't know. We're going to move on to our next story here. Pretty interesting one. Jill Stein released a new ad that I think is straight fire. And I'm not just saying that because I'm supporting Jill Stein. I really do think this ad is straight fire. We're going to start with this ad, and then we're going to get into the speech that she made recently at the rally in Dearborn, Michigan with Abandon Harris. So Jill Stein and Shama Sawant were in Dearborn, Michigan earlier for a rally with the Abandon Harris campaign. And I want to play a Jill speech. But first and foremost, we got to start with this ad.
We have fascism right here and now in the form of the Biden-Harris administration, who are conducting a genocide. There's no greater sign of fascism than genocide. The Democrats are not the solution. They are part of the problem. The American public is with us. The world is with us. And the eyes of the world are watching. And they want to shut down this genocide. They want to end the flow of weapons. They want to end the assault on Lebanon.
The coming Kamala Harris administration, the current Biden administration, they're sending a clear message that genocide is okay.
The world is in agreement on this. The only ones who are not in agreement is our criminal warmongering leadership, who should be in The Hague. They should not be walking the streets of America as the war criminals that they are, responsible for 200,000 murders and 2 million people who are being tortured every day in Gaza.
I support Jill Stein because she's the first presidential candidate that I feel like shares the voice of the Middle Eastern people. We do make up a large portion of this country, but unfortunately it's as if our voices are never heard. And finally, we have a candidate that actually respects who we are.
We have the power to shut this down, to end empire, to end the squandering of our precious tax dollars, which are being spent on endless war after endless war.
For the first time, as Middle Easterners, we feel like our voices are heard from the presidential candidate. Thank you so much.
So awesome. Forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good. We have that right here and now in our campaign.
It's very clear that the two-party system is corrupt. Both sides have become a genocidal oligarchy, and we can't stand for it anymore.
Thanks to everyone who's out there in support of ending this genocide in Gaza now.
This is Jill Stein, and I approve this message.
So that was a pretty based ad, and it's obvious that Jill understands like what the American people want, in particular when it comes to this war in Gaza, and now Lebanon. Also, Iran is now involved as well. Over 2,000 people have been killed in Lebanon. Over 100 children have been killed recently by Israel, and Israel is doing everything that they set out to do, which is to destroy the countries around them so that they can expand, to genocide the people in Gaza, to push out those in the West Bank, even if they have to, they'll kill them if they have to. And then also now they are doing the same thing in Lebanon. Jill Stein is speaking to this fact. She is telling people about this, but more importantly, she's aligned here with the people in Dearborn, Michigan, with abandoned Harris. Let's hear what she has to say here. And then I'm going to show you a comparison between what she is saying and what she's doing to Biden and Kamala when it comes to Israel. What do the people want?
Free Palestine. Palestine will free us. We refuse to vote for Palestine. Well, let me fix that. We refuse to vote for genocide in Palestine. We refuse. We refuse to be talked into selling our souls, into compromising, into being talked, into affirming, endorsing, and enabling genocide. And when we are asked to please, won't we be quiet? Won't we just shut up and sit down? Won't we just be good little boys and girls? Because truly the Democratic Party owns our votes. They own Muslim votes, they own Black votes, they own youth votes, they own so-called liberal votes. But they don't. They have to earn our votes. Any politician who tells you that they own your vote does not deserve consideration of your vote. The Democrats are running scared, and they should be scared. They could fix this if they wanted. They could win back the Muslim vote, but they would rather lose the election. They would rather lose the election than stop the genocide. This is on them. They want to blame Muslims. They want to blame Greens. They want to blame socialists. They want to blame anybody, but just take the focus off of their genocide. Democrats have been losing votes profoundly. When was the big tipping point? It was actually in 2010 in the midterm elections, when they lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures across the country. They lost 64 seats in Congress. They lost 13 seats in the Senate. They lost 13 governorships.
And they're losing in the Senate right now. Right now, the Republican Party is ahead of the Democratic Party in the Senate. It's 50 to 46. 50 to 44. If the Democratic Party wins those 6 undecided seats in the Senate, it'll be tied 50-50.
Where was the third party to blame that on? There was none. This was the after effect, basically, of the Democrats throwing working people under the bus in the bailouts for Wall Street and the big banks and the mortgage brokers in 2008. They bailed out Wall Street and they threw out the homeowners. Instead of bailing out students and families who badly need a bailout, needed it then and need it now, very much against expressed public opinion. The 2 Democratic houses of Congress and the Obama Democratic White House, a trifecta of Democrats, decided to bail out Wall Street to the tune of trillions of dollars and allow millions of homeowners basically to be thrown out and lose their life savings. So the Democrats were punished. They didn't have any third party to blame it on. There was no spoiler mythology in 2010. They just said they got shellacked and they didn't explain why. And since then, that loss has continued as the Democrats continue to lose votes because they have abandoned working people. And even going back before the Wall Street bailouts, you had Bill Clinton and NAFTA and the loss of millions and millions of workers' jobs. So the Democrats have been throwing working people under the bus for decades, actually. They have no one to blame but themselves.
And that part right there, I think, is incredibly true. They want to point fingers at everybody else. They want to point fingers at Jill Stein, Cornel West, Claudia de la Cruz. They want to point fingers at you. They want to point fingers at me, everybody else but theirself, because they completely abandoned the working class. Look at it. Reminder, the Teamsters decided not to endorse the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party was really took it some kind of way. Like, how dare you not do? Nobody owes you anything.
This is why they cannot discuss the issues, because they are not standing up for their traditional base. As Joe Biden said in the 2020 race, he said that nothing will change. He reassured the Wall Street donors that nothing will change. And indeed, what changed? Well, the billionaires got even richer. They doubled and even tripled their wealth during COVID, while ordinary working people were pushed further and further into poverty. Child poverty rates have tripled, in fact, in the last 3 years. That data just came out. Over 60% of workers are living paycheck to paycheck. Some 87 million Americans do not have adequate health insurance. Some 18 million could not afford their pharmaceuticals. Some 8 million were pushed into poverty just trying to afford their health care alone. You have young people, according to polls now, 50% are saying they are hopeless about the future. And a quarter of young people are saying that they, in fact, have considered harming themselves in just the last 2 weeks before that poll. So this is not a world that is working for working people in this country. And that goes hand in hand with the endless war machine, which is conducting war and genocide, specifically in the Middle East, but wars all over the world. And in fact, we have seen a whole series of catastrophic wars since 9/11 that have cost U.S. taxpayers some $20 trillion, according to Brown University Cost of War Project. In the last year alone, these are numbers crunched by Jeffrey Sachs at the Columbia University Economics Department, that we have spent, the average American household has spent in the last year some $12,000 alone on the endless war machine.
And they expect us to not push back or have any type of a say-so about how our tax dollars are spent. That's the thing that's really interesting to me. They don't want you to protest against these wars and say, how dare you push back against that? Oh, you must be some type of Putin puppet or something like that. As if we can't be upset about that. That's the thing that drives me crazy. I don't have the right to complain about that. How many of you want your tax dollars spent to war? How many of you want that? How many of you would prefer if your tax dollars went to something right here in the US that would help out the American people instead of being used overseas to kill people?
It's 50% and more of our congressional budget. This is costing us big time at home. It's impoverishing us at home. This is why they tell us we don't have the money for the victims of Hurricane Helene. This is why people are isolated. This is why people do not have the food and the water and the electricity that they need in the wake of the third worst hurricane on record in American history. This is why we are not fixing that problem at its source. We need to start phasing out fossil fuels. It's great to create renewables, but we need to end fossil fuels. And in fact, we need public ownership and public management and public accountability for the fossil fuel industry, for the banking industry. We need public banks. We need public management and ownership, likewise, of transportation. There's no
public banks. That's a big one, you guys. The public banking. You know that North Dakota has a public bank. It's called the Bank of North Dakota. They're kind of hush about it. They don't want to do interviews about it. I tried. But this is the reason why, part of the reason why North Dakota didn't suffer during the 2008 housing crisis the way that other states did. They had a public bank, and there should be more push for that. You don't hear Kamala Harris talking about a public bank. You don't hear Donald Trump talking about public bank. You know, they don't want you to know about these things. You're really not supposed to know about it. Most people, again, how many of you been to North Dakota? Most of us probably haven't, right? Right. So our government really does not want you to know about public banking. That's why you don't hear them talk about it.
No way that we will have a national rail system unless we are actually coordinating that on a public basis. We also need public housing with public ownership of this critical resource. Back in the Clinton administration, they passed the so-called Fair Cloth Amendment. There was nothing fair about it. It basically prohibited any further expenditures on public housing, which is absolutely critical if we are truly going to meet the urgent and dire needs of housing in this country. Some 50% of Americans now who rent their housing are severely economically stressed, paying 30 to 50% and more of their income just to keep a roof over their heads, which doesn't leave much to pay your student loans or your car insurance or your healthcare costs and so on. We have a housing emergency in this country right now, and we can solve that right now, by the way. We can solve that by creating rent control at the federal level across the whole country to stop the gentrification, to stop the continuing displacement.
Not to mention, for most people, when you get paid, most of your money goes to what? It goes to rent. It goes to your mortgage. It goes to your housing costs.
We need a tenant bill of rights so that renters are not arbitrarily evicted so that their landlords can just raise the rent and gentrify the communities.
Yep.
In Europe, many countries are building what's now called social housing, which is mixed income. It's permanent. It's housing that's in the public domain. We need a counterweight to the private housing industry, which is driven by luxury housing and big profits for big developers. We need public housing that will meet our needs.
I want to talk about that mixed income housing. When I was in Montreal recently, I finally did like an actual tour, which I had never done since every time I go up there. But I did an actual tour, and they took us across the bridge from the downtown, and they took us to a neighborhood, and they said, this is another part of Montreal. This used to be just all housing projects. And they said, but now you can't do that anymore in Montreal. Like now you have to have mixed economic housing. So there is no such like, this is the ghetto. This is the, the poor side of town. This is the hood or whatever. It's not a thing. Like they have mixed economic housing. So think about that. If we did have that in the US, then people would have those zip codes that would end up getting more resource, more blah, blah, blah. People would have the zip codes that would get more resources for those public schools, because that's the reality. If you live in a neighborhood where the income is significantly low, then obviously that means that, again, property taxes go towards public school. So that means that the public schools in that neighborhood are going to be under-resourced and underfunded. But if you create that rule that they created in Montreal, Canada now, where you cannot do that, where you have to have mixed income housing, well, then you're talking about these schools being able to get more resources. So then it's not all about your zip code. That's a good point. I'm glad she brought that up.
And that housing also needs to be environmentally sound and based on renewable energy. This is why, as part of our Green New Deal, we also call for environmentally sound housing and the building of 15 million new units of affordable housing through the public housing and social housing. And by the way, on day one, we will declare a climate emergency on day one because we have a climate emergency. If Hurricane Helene did not make that point for you, then just look at the Colorado River, which is very close to shutting down. And the Colorado River supplies the water for California agriculture, which supplies half of the fruits and vegetables for the entire nation. So
California, that's another one. Where do people think that California gets that from? The Colorado River is especially important, and a lot of people don't talk about it because a lot of people don't know about it.
You think you've seen food inflation? Well, just wait until the Colorado River shuts down, which could be in the next 1 to 2 years. The Washington Post ran a headline last year calling it the doomsday scenario on the Colorado River. And we don't hear about this much from the corporate press, which is why another thing that we will do on day one, if we are so lucky as to turn the White House into a greenhouse and make the world a better place, we will also on day one undertake an antitrust lawsuit against the corporatized, consolidated media so that we can break up big media.
Yeah.
So that the media is no longer dominated by the apologists for power. We need watchdog media, not lapdog media. It's hard to come by in this day and age.
And that's what we really have. We have the media that is going to sit up there and carry water for certain politicians. It's ridiculous.
But thanks, of course, to all those who are here today to cover this event. Thank you to the press for being the exception to the rule by covering what's going on here. And let me again just say why this is so important and give a big thank you, especially to Abandon Biden, to Workers Strike Back, and to Dearborn, and to everyone who is here today. We are ground zero. We are the moral compass that is saying no to genocide, that is saying no to endless empire and its endless war machine. We are saying no to oligarchy. We are saying no to rising fascism, which is a serious problem, not just waiting for Donald Trump. It's happening right now here under Democrats with cop cities, with the war on freedom of the press, the war on freedom of speech, the war on the freedom to protest. Cop cities are happening under many Democratic municipal administrations across the country. We're seeing some 70 to 80 cop cities being built. We are seeing the training of local police now by the Israeli Defense Forces, teaching these abusive tactics for those who've been subjected to them. It's absolutely outrageous, criminal, and dehumanizing, and we need to put an end to it. Let me also say another action item on day one is to instruct the Department of Justice, our Green Department of Justice, to take AIPAC to court as a violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And for those who are not convinced, I highly recommend that you see the recent investigative reporting that was done by Li Fang, formerly of The Intercept, now independent. His investigation of nonprofit organizations in this country who are actually funded by the Knesset, by money coming directly from Israel to nonprofit organizations in this country in order to change legislation, in order to change rules on campuses. Why is it that we suddenly have this ocean of repression on campuses or an ocean of anti-BDS legislation around the country. This is not coming from nowhere. This is funded. This is action on behalf of a foreign government, and the money is actually coming from the foreign government.
100%, which is why AIPAC should have to register as a foreign agent. We should not have Congress members walking around in the halls of Congress wearing an IDF uniform, which does happen. We need to make some hardcore lines here, folks, and I'm just keeping it real with you. Either it's, not right to represent another foreign entity, or it isn't. And the whole thing about, well, Israel's different because they represent our interests. No. Israel's not the United States. And it is really interesting that the state of Israel, something so tiny, can have so much control, and how our politicians can just sit back and just let it happen because they're all bought in. They're all bought and paid for. And you have a few that may be able to speak up that are not aligned with AIPAC, that do not receive donor money from them or from the Israeli lobby altogether. But the reality is most of them do. And had they had to register as a foreign agent, we wouldn't be in this situation, which is something that JFK actually wanted to happen. JFK wanted AIPAC to register as a foreign agent. And if that would have happened, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Not necessarily all of it, but lots of it. So I recommend anybody who has questions about what's going on here to go to the source. The main thing I want to say here, I want to quote first Frederick Douglass, who said that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We are that demand. Don't listen to anyone who tells you to sit down and shut up and just take marching orders from the Democratic Party. And further, in the words of Alice Walker, and I paraphrase her a little bit, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. Yep. We have it, and what you see happening here today is part of that. This is exactly why the Democrats fought so hard to keep us off the ballot. This is why they were publicly advertising, shamefully publicly advertising for infiltrators and disruptors and spies. They were publicly advertising they did job postings for people to manage infiltrators and spies on our campaign. They also hijacked our public funding and held onto it for months while we were conducting our ballot drives. And they caused some trouble on that front. But this is why they are running scared. They are running scared because they know that their days are numbered. Their days of genocide are numbered because 68% of Americans, according to a poll done even back in November, already oppose the genocide and demand an immediate ceasefire. And since then, 61% of Americans demand an immediate weapons embargo, and we must have that. And I strongly echo the remarks made earlier today that the longshoremen really need to be urged by us to stand up and to be the source. It is working people. It is working people organized at the workplace in their unions that bring our moral vision, our moral compass to the political and economic reality. And boycott, divestment, and sanctions has been enormously effective. Yep. Israel is in deep trouble on many fronts, both militarily and economically. And some of that is because of the contracts that are being canceled, most recently at MIT. MIT, the home of so much of the military-industrial complex, canceled a major contract. And this is undoubtedly why so many heads are being bashed in campuses around the country.
They canceled the contract with Lockheed Martin. And I covered that story. It's interesting, though. I paid attention. A lot of people in independent media did not cover that story. I think it may have just flew under the radar, but that's a big deal, you know? So corporate media is telling you that Netanyahu's winning or he's gaining ground, but they're leaving out important things that are happening that I think you do need to know about that can point to and show you the other ways that Israel is losing. And I would say that Israel's reputation has been completely destroyed across the world.
Because so many campuses are being funded by military contracts, which again gets to why we are here. We are here to create an America and a world that works for all of us. Step one is to stop the genocide. And every vote that is cast for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or RFK, because he's still on the ballot in some states, many states actually, every vote is an endorsement of genocide. Every vote for our campaign is a shot across the bow of the empire, telling them that we are here, we are organized, we are not going away, this genocide will be ended. And again, on day one of our administration, in fact, even before day one, on the day of the election, we would pick up the phone and tell Bibi Netanyahu that his genocidal war is over. And that would not only end the genocide in Gaza, that would end the war that is expanding right now into the West Bank, into Lebanon, into Yemen, into Syria, into Iran. This is unbelievably dangerous for all of us. And all of this goes away the minute the genocide is over. It's not like it's rocket science. It's not like Biden and Harris don't have the power to end it. They claim to be working diligently night and day for a ceasefire, but actually we know from the revelations published in Politico the other day that what they're working for is the expanding war. They have been working to encourage Israel to move forward and attack Lebanon. So they are not doing what they say, but they do have the power. We must hold them to account because it's simple. It is a simple matter, as Amr was saying earlier in the program. It's not complicated. It's simple. We have the moral imperative to end this genocide. We have the popular support, and we have the means to end this genocide by picking up the phone and telling Bibi Netanyahu it's over, just as Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s. And it doesn't.
That's a very good point. Again, we got to continue to mention the Ronald Reagan piece, right? Because what that shows you is that the Democratic Party today has moved to the right of Ronald Reagan. This is why you see the Dick Cheneys come on into Kamala Harris's, applaud Kamala and say, I'm going to support you. This is why you're seeing Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, all these random Joe Schmo warmongering people jump on board because the Democratic Party has now moved to the right of Ronald Reagan when it comes to war. This is insane. And I wonder if any of you who were old enough to vote like during the early 80s, which I was not, I was a baby, but if any of you were old enough to vote for the president during the early 80s, like when Ronald Reagan did run, I'm curious to hear from you, like, what do you see that's different now? I mean, the fact that he was able to pick up the phone and just say, whoa, this is too much, cut it out, stop. And our country has become more and more hawkish on war.
And there, which is why our movement does not end. Our movement does not end on election day. And whatever we do, it is a victory. It is a victory whether we are 2% or 5% or 15% or 26%, which can win a four-way race. Remember, in the last presidential election, 1 out of every 3 eligible voters voted with their feet by declining to vote for the parties of war and Wall Street being rammed down our throats back then and now as well. So 1 out of 3 voters is enough to win a 3-way and a 4-way race. So I would not accept as written in stone that we are not going to the White House. I wouldn't accept anything in this election that has defied all expectations. We aim as high as we deserve to go.
And we'll go ahead and wrap it there because I want to show you the comparison. Now, I just want to compare what Jill said to what Joe Biden said here. Listen to this. I want you to hear the difference.
Thank you, Kareem. Thank you so much, Mr. President, for being here. This week, Senator Chris Murphy said it's certainly a possibility that the Israeli government is not going to sign any diplomatic agreement prior to the election, which is what you have been calling for so long, potentially to try to influence the result. Do you agree? Do you have any worries that Netanyahu may be trying to influence the election and that's why he has not agreed to a diplomatic solution?
No administration has helped Israel more than I have. None. None. None.
None. No administration has helped Israel more than he has. Hold on to that. Then you have Kamala Harris, which, by the way, she was ratioed for this tweet. I want to show you the ratio first. This tweet here that she tweeted yesterday, 14,000 likes, 46,000 comments. She was ratioed here. This was disgusting. The people of Lebanon are facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. I'm concerned about the security and well-being of the civilians suffering in Lebanon and will continue working to help meet the needs of all civilians there. To that end, the U.S. will provide nearly $157 million in additional assistance to the people of Lebanon for essential needs such as food, shelter, water, protection, and sanitation to help those who have been displaced by the recent conflict. This additional support brings total U.S. assistance to Lebanon over the last year to over $385 million. You know why she got ratioed? Because people know that she's full of it. How are you going to sit up here and say that you're concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Lebanon when you gave Israel the weapons to do it? And when I say she was ratioed, like, I'm not kidding. I don't think she was expecting this because I was just kind of like, let me come here. Can I go to, oh, they won't let me do see retweets on here. I used to be able to just go to there's retweets and comments. But anyway, if you were to look at, oh, it's gonna let me comment. If you were to look at the comments, like people, and it's not just, and that's the thing. Some people are Republican. Oh, look, there's me. Stop lying. You sent them the weapons. That's me. Jesus. Ooh, Jake Shields said we send billions to Israel to bomb Lebanon, then millions to Lebanon to rebuild. How does this make sense? Like, people are really, and then I believe, oh, Ben Norton, that was the other one I wanted to show you as well. Ben Norton says the people of Lebanon wouldn't need humanitarian assistance if the Israeli colonial regime weren't invading their country with full U.S. support and bombing and shelling their cities with U.S. weapons and ammunition. So again, it shows you here, Biden-Harris is giving Israel billions of dollars of weapons to massacre civilians in Lebanon. They 100% support Israel's criminal invasion of Lebanon. So you can see it here. And there's a number of things he points to. Biden sends it a record amount of aid all the way. See how much money they're getting? You see that? That's up to over, 18 billion? Israel bombed Lebanon today, killing hundreds, with the U.S. is sending more bombs. You see this? Again, all the receipts. Israel says it has secured $8.7 billion in U.S. military aid. Again, senior White House figures privately told Israel that the U.S. would support its decision to ramp up military pressure against Hezbollah. So this is all backed by the U.S., and that's why she was clowned for that idiotic statement that she made on Twitter. But people have had enough. And I want to show you this here, this poll. Peter Dow shared this. New Gallup poll, 69% of independents, 53% of Democrats, and 48% of Republicans want a third party. Because the Republican and Democratic parties do such a poor job of representing the American people. Support for third party among Democrats is up 13% since 2022. I'm not kidding. You can see it here for yourself. This is insane. Independence is the dotted green line here. And Republicans is the red line, obviously. And Democrats is the blue line here. So people want other options. And the Democratic Party knows that. And the protest should show you that. Because, see, this is the tone deafness of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Jill is present at these events. Claudia has been present. Cornell has been present at these protests. You would never catch Kamala Harris here. Now, this was yesterday. Now, remember, there were thousands, tens of thousands marched across the United States as part of an International Action Day for Palestine. October 7th is tomorrow. October 7th is Monday. Well, I'll have this clip for Monday. So if you see this Monday, you're going to be like, October 7th is today. But there we go. It's been a year. Kamala Harris knows what the people want. But instead of going for what the people want, anything to stay on the good side of AIPAC, anything to stay on the good side of our donors. These politicians don't mean anything and don't really plan to do anything. Kamala Harris is just there to be an empty suit to say that she's not Donald Trump. And a majority of Americans, a lot of them will fall for it. And they'll feel like they really did something. By going to the poll and supporting Kamala Harris, they'll say, well, at least I didn't get Donald Trump. Only to realize that she's going to be even more hawkish when it comes to war. She's not going to be what you think she is going to be. And her record will show you that. You'll be looking at another Obama presidency, only this time even more hawkish when it comes to war. So that's where the Democratic Party is at. So when people try to shame you for wanting to vote third party, you should tell them they need to point their fingers at the leadership of the Democratic Party and the donor class that have made it that way. Let's go to the comments here. Thank you, Sparky. Good to see you. Love, Sabby. Love, great work. Welcome, Sparky. Thank you, P. Smith. Imagine being deplored by the party that sucks. Brett Weinstein, Jill Stein for president. Oh, I read that twice. I'm sorry. Thank you, Pikachu. Please talk about Africa's stream ban and Blinken statement. I am discussing that Tuesday evening, actually. Thank you for the super sticker Black Progress Network. Thank you. Thank you, Blue Moon, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and all the too big to fail banks send money to Israel. Take your money out and put it in NFCU. Thank you, Roger. That's what I was waiting to hear, Sab. Domestic policy. Yay. Thank you for the super sticker, Walter. Thank you, Rosemary. Dr. Stein and Professor Ware are the administration we need in Washington that will represent the people instead of representing corporations and special interest groups. Hashtag Stein-Ware 2024. Thank you. Thanks, Sparky. Make Israel Syria again. In those Ottoman Empire days, Levant Jews got along fine with their neighbors, whether Muslim, Christian, or otherwise. Thanks, Andre. I was wrong to initially support Kamala. I organized phone calls to get Biden out of office, thinking Biden was uniquely horrendous. It's time to listen to our moral compass and support the Green Party. Shout out to Andre. Thank you, Penny. How is lithium, cobalt mining, and occupying farmland with turbines that end up in landfills renewable or green? Ask Congo and NCRE Lithium. Thank you, Sparky. Don't even leave a patch called Ukraine lest it remain carpetbaggers' money laundry, a NATO playground, and becomes a BlackRock property. Thank you for this one as well, Sparky. Go Ansar Allah, fight the power. Thanks, Penny. Arab monarchs begged Reagan to stop Israel because they feared instability. Reagan didn't stop Contras, though. That's true. You're right about that. Thanks, Roger. Youngest who voted Ron in 80 and 84, born 62 through 66. Okay. And thank you, Alcas. Check out Jasmine Crockett defend Izzy on Glenn Greenwald's reporting. It's sad and sickening. SMH, don't let these people fool you. The masks are off. Yeah, it is sad. And she's another one. Like when she came in, I was like, she's just going to be the black female AOC. I could tell early on. Thank you, Sparky. Back when Ronald Reagan told Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin to knock it off with Lebanon, U.S. citizens were still hungover from Vietnam. So no one, including the Congress, was interested in war. That's a good point. Hey. Okay. And we want to check Rockfin really quick as well. Just want to make sure I bring up those chatters for you guys. Who are you? Who? I really want to know. I just got to make sure I mute it here. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to read these because it's kind of hard to share with Rockfin here. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Public banks are made for just this, Sab. Rebuild infrastructure as part of disaster recovery. We already see that the feds are telling us we're on our own. No wonder Louisiana governor ain't call in Bush FEMA at first. FEMA got too many private contracts they have to abide by, sacrificing the public good. And as we've seen and continue to see, a complete debacle. Let's have public banks for every state in the U.S. I'm down with that. Let's make it happen. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sabby and Eric, for doing the damn thing and creating great journalism here today. And thank you, DC. What is the censoring me for how? Oh, get out of here. Get the fuck out of here, man. I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, yeah, for those of you who are new, I have no problem cussing people out on the show. Like, get the fuck out of here. And there was one more that I did want to read that I forgot to read last time. Let me go to that one. Thank you for this, Roger. Whoa. The Whitmer case found out that kidnapping plot was all FBI manufactured. There were more agents plus those for the FBI. Then there were those actually plotting the kidnapping. Found out in court it was the FBI who came up with the plot, not the accused who got coaxed into it by the FBI. Just like Ray Epps was telling protesters on January to rush the Capitol, just like the Herald Square. The Herald Square bomber, where they tried to get an Arab teen or early 20s to go along with the plot to blow up the Herald Square in New York City. The poor kid who had mental issues, where he said before he goes along with it, he has to get permission from his mom first, just like they tried to use William O'Neill of the Black Panthers to convince Fred Hampton to blow things up like the Weather Underground was doing, targeting government buildings. And thank you for this one. Benji is hijacking our language. Hey, Benji, if you believe so much that countries should provide social safety net services, then stop asking us for money so we can just do that here in the US. Also, he who controls information controls the world. Dr. Stephen Franklin of Babylon 5 played the late Richard Biggs. I say they also control banks. Maybe not all, but a good amount. Prove me wrong. Interesting point there, Roger. We're going to finish up here with the main ballot measures. So something that you can do locally. If you don't want to support the presidential election at all, and you live in a BI state, you do need to know what's going to be on the ballot this November. We already covered Massachusetts, and now we are moving over to Maine. Little tidbit about Maine. Maine is a indirect initiative state. So what does that mean? It means that successful petitions are first presented to the state legislature. If the measure is not adopted without change or is vetoed by the governor, the law is placed before the voters. So similar to us here in Massachusetts, they have a successful petition. It still has to get approved by the legislature, and then it's on the ballot. Whereas a state like California doesn't have to deal with this because they are a direct initiative state. They have a successful petition, get the signatures, and it goes directly on the ballot. That's why they have more ballot questions than we do. Let's go ahead and jump down here. No, I don't know why I just, oh, that's weird. It like froze on me. Hold on, let me move this out of here. Let me close some tabs. Sometimes it helps when I close some tabs. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okie dokie. Another fun point here about Maine. You have, so listen to this. Maine signatures are valid for 1 year after the date that they are signed. However, signatures may be collected up to 18 months after the petition form is furnished by the Secretary of State. Signatures must be filed with the Secretary by the 50th day or the first regular legislative session or the 25th day of the second regular session. So a note here from Roger, who helps me with these ballot measures. He says, so in other words, you really don't have 18 months, you have 12. It's true. Oh man. Okay, let's jump forward. The first question. So main question 1, limit contributions to super PACs initiative. Aye. This is the one I was telling you about. A yes vote supports limiting the amount of campaign contributions to $5,000 from individuals and business entities to political action committees that make independent expenditures, also known as a super PAC. So let's read this part here because Roger's telling me to read the red. First, let's break this down. What is a super PAC? A super PAC is a political committee that can solicit and spend unlimited sums of money. There are not PACs, so they're not political action committees. The two types of groups are legally distinct and different rules govern each. A super PAC cannot contribute directly to a politician or a political party, but it can spend independently to campaign for or against political figures. Super PACs are legally known as independent expenditure only committees. Meanwhile, traditional PACs have a $5,000 per person cap on donations and cannot accept money from corporations or unions, but can contribute directly to a politician or political party. However, in a recent realsludge.com, Lindsey Graham sent the Federal Election Commission an advisory opinion request to ask if the campaign could participate in joint fundraising committee with a super PAC where both groups would share data and other information as required under the joint fundraising agreement and applicable FEC reporting regulations and coordinate scheduling logistics regarding fundraising events. The FEC agreed. So now this definition will have to be changed. This is important. Super PACs and campaigns can now work together and coordinate in the open. So I don't know if everybody knew about that. How did we get here? Buckley versus Vallejo. In 1976, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment protected the right of individuals to spend unlimited sums of money on political speech. The court affirmed in part and reversed in part the judgment of the D.C. Circuit, while affirming the judgment of the district court. The court underscored a distinction between contributions and expenditures, while upholding the FECA's federal campaign contribution limits. The court overturned limits on expenditures. The court felt that limits on campaign contributions serve the government's interest in safeguarding the integrity of elections, but citing First Amendment concerns, felt that the effect of expenditure limitations is to restrict the quantity of campaign speech by individuals, groups, and candidates. The decision acknowledged that restrictions on campaign limits and expenditures both have potential First Amendment implications, but the FECA's limitations on expenditures constituted significantly more severe restrictions on protected freedom of political expression and associations than do its limitations on financial contributions. This is one that is really important. Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. After two 2010 rulings, the U.S. Supreme Court lifted restrictions on corporation and union spending in politics. Because these entities are associations of citizens, the First Amendment right to free speech also applies to these groups. Individuals, corporations, and unions may now legally donate and spend unlimited amounts on independent political speech. They may also donate unlimited amounts to groups that make independent expenditures. In Citizens United versus the FEC, the court considered federal laws that prohibited corporations and unions from using their general treasury funds to make independent expenditures for free speech defined as an electioneering communication or for speech expressly advocating the election or defeat of a candidate. Speech Now versus FEC. In 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that individuals can contribute unlimited sums of money to political committees to make independent expenditures. So that's how we got here, folks. Yeah, Steven says United States for sale. Basically, that's how we got here. Basically. So who is supporting this? Equal Citizens, that's one of the organizations that supports this measure. And one of the arguments is super PACs have been with us for more than 13 years. So it is understandable that most lawyers believe the Supreme Court has upheld them. It has not. Likewise, it is understandable that many political organizations, including reform organizations on the left and the right, have become dependent on the super wealthy to do their work. Some of them now support super PACs, as do many of the most wealthy in America who use super PACs to influence American politics. But we know that the vast majority of Americans on both the left and the right hate the corruption of big money in American politics. And we will do everything that we can to give those citizens the chance to get their money back. This is a big one for Maine. Let's see how much campaign finance money has been spent for this measure. Over $1 million has been spent to support it. $0 has been spent to oppose it. So, yes. Quick note here from Roger. Yes, vote yes, vote yes. I cannot stress this more. Vote yes. Sabby, I believe they will, because remember in 2023 BI, where they voted to make sure that foreign interests are prohibited from donating to Maine elections. I do remember that. Yeah, if you're in Maine, that's a no-brainer. Yes, I would vote yes for that. Question number 2, science and technology research and commercialization bond issue. A yes vote supports authorizing $25 million in general obligation bonds to the Maine Technology Institute for research, development, and commercialization of Maine-based public and private institutions in support of technological innovation. Well. No money has been spent to support or oppose this measure. Quick note here. My concern is that this will advance artificial intelligence, leading to more jobs getting replaced and leading to the Terminator, Matrix, 1984, etc. Vote no, vote no. Yeah, I wouldn't vote for this one. I think we need to try to keep as many of the jobs as we can. They really want to replace a lot of these jobs with AI if they can. I'm telling you, folks, we need to try to push against that. So no. Question 3 for Maine, historic community buildings bond issue. A yes vote supports authorizing $10 million in general obligation bonds for the restoration of local community buildings owned by governmental or nonprofit organizations to be matched by 25% from either private or nonprofit sources. Now, according to the fiscal note, the estimated cost of the bond is $12 million with a $10 million in principal and assuming a 3.75 interest rate over 10 years. $2.06 million in interest. No money spent to support or oppose. Question 4, development and maintenance of trails bond issue. A yes vote supports authorizing $30 million in general obligation bonds for the development and maintenance of outdoor trails to be matched by at least $3 million in public and private contributions. The bonds will be used for non-motorized, motorized, and multi-use trails, as well as trailheads and trail amenities. Out of this amount, 25% of the funds must be used for non-motorized trails, 25% must be used for motorized trails, and 50% for multi-use trails. According to the fiscal note, The estimated cost of the bond is $36.1 million and $30 million in principal, and assuming a 3.75% interest rate over 10 years, $6.18 million in interest. If you have never been to Maine, I will tell you there are a lot of trails. So if you like to hike or if you like to bike, Maine is kind of known for that. And I think if you've never been to Maine, like go visit during the summer. There's a lot of outdoor, activity that you can do there. You can also go to Arcadia as well. I usually go like Portland, but Arcadia's a big popular destination there. So who supports this? Richard Bennett, Russell Black, and Jessica Fay. So there's some bipartisanship here, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. LL Bean, of course. Some of the corporations include ATV Maine and Maine Municipal Association, to name a few, Chamber of Commerce. One of the arguments here says, from my background in marketing, I believe Maine has the potential to become broadly recognized as the state with the most incredible trails in the eastern United States. Outstanding trails could easily become part of Maine's brand identity, drawing people to our state for recreation, to support and start businesses, and to relocate. Yeah, that's a big one. I will say something that Maine has been trying to do over the past couple of years. They have been trying to find people to relocate to Maine permanently. There are a number of doctors and dentists that are retiring, and I know that's a need in the state. It's just not one of those states that most people move to because it is cold for most of the year. I mean, I'm in Massachusetts and we have long winters too, but our winters are not as long as Maine's. So there's just something to keep in mind. There is no campaign finance money spent to support or oppose. And the last one is question 5, the state flag referendum. A yes vote supports replacing the existing state flag with the flag consisting of a pine tree and a North Star on a buff light tan background, often called the pine tree flag. Who supports this? State Representative and the bill sponsor, Sean Paulhaus. One of the arguments says, people say it looks like a second grader could draw it, but that's part of the appeal. Anyone can draw it. Anyone can recognize it. We're the pine tree state. People are already flying the 1901 flag. Is it State Representative not Billy Bob. Not Billy Bob. Billy Bob Falkingham. He said, I like the blue background. I think it goes back to Civil War significance to have that blue flag. The sailor and the farmer have historical significance back to the roots of the state of Maine, and that's what they represent. I don't think people of Maine want us down here and changing our flag. I think that we've got more important things to do. Oh man, give it up for Billy Bob. Billy Bob. Oh, am I frozen? I'm fine on my end. I don't know what you guys are seeing, but I'm not frozen on my end. Weird. I don't know. Did I finish? Oh, one more. And no money spent to support or oppose. So yeah, that's Maine. I think next is Colorado. That's the next state we're going to cover for BI measures. So I will see you Tuesday evening. We'll get into Colorado. We'll hopefully have all of these done before November. So let's go to some of the comments here and we'll do the damn thing. Thank you, CM, who's been a member for 6 months, says hit the like button. Oh yes, do that, guys. Hit the like button if you haven't had a chance to do that. Shout out to Josie Justice for becoming a new member. Give Josie a big whoop whoop. Shout out to my comrade Charlie Mack, who's a part of our mutual aid chapter here. Language clutching pearls. And thank you, Apartment 2D. Gen Xer here. In the early 80s, Reagan ignored AIDS death and accelerated the backlash against women's bodily autonomy. Never thought he'd appear human or humane. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. That's it for me, guys. I hope you have a great Sunday evening. I'll see you again Tuesday night. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.